Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, as usual, Vasili Gianarakos. Vasili, another great episode 100. What an awesome milestone. I am personally super happy about it because I wasn't sure if it was going to last this long, and it totally has.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, we've hit 100 at this point. I haven't been around for all 100, probably about like 15 to 20 at this point, but it's been fun. To get those recorded, and this can be a great episode 100 that I'm sure all the fans are going to love to listen to, and just dive into some trade deadline talk a week out from the deadline. How have you been, though? I mean, it's been a week off since the last time we spoke for the last episode of the podcast. So how's it been going?
Been good, man. A little miserable hockey wise, but it was cool to be in San Diego. Went for work, so that was nice. Got a little sprinkle of nice weather, and now we have it here. So it's almost like it followed me. So that was cool.
It's even like 10 degrees the last couple of days too in Ontario in Canada. So we're slowly getting out of winter eventually.
That's Celsius to those.
Yeah, Celsius, not Fahrenheit. Sorry.
Yeah, us Americans, the only ones to use it. And returning guest of the show, he's got his own content. He's part of the club here, Flyers Nitty Gritty. But obviously, he's been on quite a bit. Asked him to come back on for episode 100. Joe Borek. Joe, welcome back, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It's awesome to be on for episode 100. Yariv does great stuff with the podcast and also player profiles, so definitely check out the other stuff Yariv does on the channel as well. But yeah, it's been a minute, but you still do a bunch of other good coverage and loved all your other podcasts you did, like the I can't remember the name of it, but the one you did,
Always
you had Lisa
Level
Ann on it. Yeah, Always Level Up. I love listening to those because they gave a background of how people got to where they were rather than just the normal interviews of talking about
I plan on
why you're famous. Yeah, like most interviews of famous people are just, oh, you're famous for what? Where this is about the background of why they
why you got there.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Appreciate that, man. Thank you. I am planning on getting back to that. It's just been this new job it's just been tough. It's tough to find time and set up time with people, but I'm not done. I'm not done yet.
It's a cool series, so it makes sense.
Appreciate it. I will be bringing that back. I got some other ideas too I do another podcast with my sister. I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time to start putting that on Flyers Nitty Gritty as well. Just lump it all together. All right, let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about. We plan on going pretty long on this one. We might have Jamie joining us. He's got some daddy duties. I was trying to find a way to make that rhyme. So he's got some dad stuff he's got to take care of. So maybe he'll join us a little bit later. And then I also invited Isaiah. I'm not sure if he's going to come. He's also moving. Try to get a bigger episode. Chris was supposed to be on, but with me having to travel, I just kind of screwed up the schedule. So we had to take a week off. But we're closer to the trade deadline. So I guess it makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
Let's
more anticipated. I guess.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks on South. Go get a cheesesteak. It's getting nice out. Go outside, wait in line. They always have a line, and get yourself an awesome cheesesteak. They, I bet, are still Flyers fans despite the pain that has caused everybody. All right, let's get into our first topic. Flyers blow a lead to the Canadiens in maybe potentially the most painful loss of the season, which is very strange considering we've already lost so much. We've already hit rock bottom so many times. But then to be leading against the worst team in the league, which I know they play better, but still, against the worst team in the league, to give up the lead when you're on the power play in the last minute, and then have Cole Caulfield, of all people, rip a slapper at 3-on-3 to win the game. It literally couldn't have been a worse turning of the knife. And obviously that was also game 999 for Claude Giroux. We enter game 1000 here on Thursday, this would be out on Wednesday. And it just felt so fucking deflating. And that's really the only way to put it for me. Vasili, what do you think? And then Joe.
It was an interesting game to watch because, I mean, you'd think they would be able to maybe beat the Canadiens, but for some people that might not be a good thing because, I mean, draft position and all, maybe losing is a better thing at this point if you look at it that way. But in terms of building a winning culture, you obviously would want to beat the Canadiens. That's the team you'd, hope to beat. I would say, though, it's not too surprising for me because it's just things we've seen in the past. Even though it is the Canadians, like you see the same tendency repeat itself where the team can't seem to hold a late lead. And I kind of almost, not to say that I saw it coming, but you saw like the Canadians were controlling the majority of the play in the third period. And then they kind of have the Flyers break down. It's just unfortunate that you'd think maybe in that point it would be younger players to make those types of mistakes, but then it's more like, veteran guys like Derek Broussard kind of in the front of the net there. Not really in the right place in terms of coverage, leaves his man open in front, who's Suzuki, and then he comes in and gets the tying goal. And then even on the Caulfield goal, I wouldn't say that's really anybody's fault. It's just more you have to be aware of kind of the puck possession on the ice. You might as well possess the puck instead of trying to like force a play. And I mean, that's Frost trying to make a nice pass. It unfortunately hits, Farabee on the back of the leg. So I wouldn't blame anybody there. It's more just, I think at this point, it doesn't look like they're going to really learn to hold on to those leads. Maybe with the last 20 games of the season, more increased roles for younger players while guys get shipped out through the deadline. Those guys start to learn more and you see some more, growth there. But I don't know if we're going to see it instantly or anything like that. What do you got? What do you think there, Joe, on the blown lead?
For me, when stuff becomes so just comical, how we lose in a season, I try to relate things to things people like. So for people that like Haley Seinfeld as a singer, I'll use a quote from one of our songs. We're on the right side of rock bottom, and I hope that we keep falling. We're on the good side of bad karma. Well, the Flyers have been on the wrong side of bad karma, the wrong side of rock bottom since about the season started. Most people, when they hit rock bottom, or teams, whatever we want to talk about, they use it to build themselves back up. I have never seen the other side of the Flyers yet, where, like, we even seen with Arizona, we talked about it for the podcast. They hit rock bottom this year. Tourney has his system running. Schmaltz, Krause, and others are playing really well now.
They're playing,
and they've looked a lot better in the last 2.5 to 3 weeks. So, like, you need to show, like, how Yo got pissed after the Montreal game. I don't necessarily think he's pushing all the right buttons, but he still had the right to get mad because they're just trying to play with the right energy and the right structure each night. And when you can't even get that out of your players each night, that's when you really have a problem coming to the rink each day, where the only guys that are consistently doing it is the guy that's hitting his 1,000th game, Claude Giroux. Even when Atkinson sucked, I still thought he brought the energy when he went through that skid like about a month and a half ago. Now he's been good again. So, like, but other guys, it looks like this team at this point, for the most part, other than maybe a select 5 guys, tends to go through the motions. And then you have some of those guys that go through the motions will step up, have a great game that one night, and then it'll kind of be back to just, let's go through the motions, get to the end of this shitstorm of the season, and then move into next year, which is not the mentality you can have, because then that mentality might stick with you into next year. So.
Yeah. And you publicly saw Mike Yo's frustrations, though he pulled back on that.
No, he retracted, which I don't know. It doesn't make quite a lot of sense to me.
I liked his reaction publicly, but at the same time, when he was like saying, "Oh, we're going to bench people" and all that, I'm like, who are you referring to? Is it Yandel? Because you're the one who played him and you're the one who's overplaying him. So it's also like, it's, in my opinion, just a complete.
Or is it guys you're going to trade? That wouldn't really make a lot of sense going into the deadline too, which maybe that's a factor into that. I don't know. But.
Potentially. Let's take a break here because Isaiah has joined. Isaiah, thank you for joining. I kind of gave people a heads up that you and Jamie might be in and out. It's okay if you can't stay the whole time, but welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me and putting up with my tardiness here.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Not a problem, dude. If anything, I asked you like last minute, so thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you're actually the MVP, Isaiah, for coming on last minute. So you don't need to apologize for the tardiness.
Yeah. Oh, now that we're talking about it, I have a list of demands here. No.
I mean, if you haven't been able to tell, I don't know if you want to chime in, but I'm sure you do. But we were just talking about the Flyers' blown lead and how just terrible that loss felt, and how it's just so indicative of this season, and how frustrating it was, and how the story couldn't be any worse with the way they lost, right? With the giving up the goal, on the power play, giving up a shorty, and then having Cole Caulfield buried on you in overtime. Just, it's like turning the knife.
Yeah, it was a big exclamation point. I yesterday out on Twitter, I put it. I described it as an apt summation or a summary of the entire season. Yeah. It's Murphy's Law. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and then on top of it, the exclamation point of, "Oh, you want to draft Cam York, and you think in the long term that he's a better draft pick than me?" Boom, and he just blows it by Carter Hart. And listen, Cole Caulfield is an elite offensive talent, and at least from a shooting perspective.
Yes,
and he's. I mean, I would have drafted him, but listen, you need defensemen, and probably the main reason this team's in a cluster F of a season, and 3 out of the last 4 could be described that way, is because of their defense and their lack of structure and their puck management decisions. So I get it.
Yeah.
I think going off of what Isaiah said, too, I completely agree with that, because that's why I said structure. The team, whether it goes back, that's why I don't think it's just on coaching. I think it's on ever since I took a picture of the banner when I was at the Sixers yesterday and said, "Wish you were still here, legend," when I took the picture of the Ed Schneider banner. Because I think it's truthfully, since he passed, the culture and structure of this team has drastically went towards the negative direction. And ever since, like Isaiah said, you had 3 of the last 4 years you could call mediocre at best. This year's an absolute shitstorm. So, you got to try to build it back up. And the first thing is getting the culture going, which is why Yo gets pissed, because it's the culture and mindset first before you get the play going in the right direction. And when it seems like you only have a couple guys that are bought in or that are kind of moving in the right direction, have their heads on straight each day, that's not going to really help you. And it's on the coaches and general managers to set that culture. But it seemed like ever since Ed died and everything, the team just hasn't had the same desire to care about other stuff on the ice compared to just the bottom line. And that kind of has had a different feel around the team since that's happened.
Well, it just doesn't seem like the team's like willing to buy in and play the right way. That's what it seems like. And that's kind of like what Yo is calling them out for. But then him retracting the statement, like what kind of message does that send to you if you're a player as well, saying, well, you got pissed like at us publicly like that, but then you're saying, well, maybe I went too far. But also the team's having like one of the worst seasons, maybe the second worst season in franchise history. So if anything, you should be probably tough on the players and their performance, or at least some players are worthy of, the way he was reacting after the game. So I just kind of find it weird. It's mixed messaging, and I don't know.
I agree.
Just not a fan of that.
No, I totally agree. And Isaiah, I assume you would agree with that too. But my thought is, like, who is he talking about? Like, who is he referring to when he's saying, like, we're going to have to drop some guys in the lineup. We're going to have to, like, who? Like, you, this is what I'm saying. Like, you're the one
to, like,
playing.
Broussard? I don't know.
Well, he's the one playing Keith Yandel in vital moments of the game. You're the one putting certain guys on the ice. You're the one who's not dropping guys in the lineup or benching them if they're not bringing it. It's like, again, I'm not blaming Mike Yeo for this. I'm just wondering what he was referring to. And like, this isn't the first bad game. So I'm trying to figure out, like, who are you talking about specifically that you are going to drop down the lineup? I mean, it's not going to be Giroux. It's probably not Atkinson. Are you talking about TK? You were publicly praising him. Are you talking about like Lindblom? He always seems to be a scapegoat somehow. Why isn't JVR on the fourth line? Like, he's a guy who's invisible.
Hasn't done anything. Yeah.
I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Like, who he's trying to?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, this is a guy. A couple. I guess it was about 4 or 5 years ago when he was coach of the
Blues,
Minnesota Wild.
Oh, okay.
He threw a stick in practice into the stands.
So actually,
I mean, he would have been better off doing that because he couldn't take that back.
Yeah,
but I think he might have been thinking about that, because that was a sign in my mind of like immaturity as a coach. And he backs himself into a corner. He's got an unenviable job right now of being an interim coach. It's crystal clear to me that he's not coming back.
No, he's definitely
not. And it's not really his fault. So he has to sit there and watch guys play below a certain par. And when he talked about playing the right way, it's kind of like, these are things you should be doing as a professional. So he's saying, in essence, they're not even meeting a minimum standard for what a professional hockey player should be doing. And to have a power play up a goal and let that happen and then end up losing in overtime because you forgot that it's a possession game in overtime. So, like it's all the little details, it's time, place, score, and all that basic stuff you learn when you're probably a squirt. And here we are, and it's all going against them. This is a classic case of losers lose. This culture is just wrecked. It's slowly been wrecked over time. And I've talked about this with you guys before. Ever since Hextall came in and a kind of a malaise set in, because it wasn't really a rebuild. It was like a retool on the fly, and they tried they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. And it's a difficult thing to do. And something dissolved along the way, like Joe was talking about the culture and everything like that. And what it means to be an effing Flyer. Well, like when AV says something like that, it has no meaning because he had no connection to the team. By then, it already had dissolved away like Alka-Seltzer. So that, to me, everything about this year screams to me that the team needs to make a really stark departure from where they're at right now. And it doesn't seem to be an indication that they're willing to do that. You see Chuck Fletcher in that interview on ESPN the other day, talking about how they just need a couple more pieces and talking about injuries and things like that. I think they're deluding themselves because this has gone bad for too long to be salvaged. And then theoretically, Giroux would not be here. There's rumors, maybe he'll take a trade and then he'll come back. But I don't even want to do that. I want to move on. I think they need to step back for a couple of years, collect draft assets, and see what they can do with that. And that draft asset could be a young player who is about to emerge, or somebody like I don't know, like who's the kid? Newhook, or he's already emerging, but the kid in LA who was drafted.
Byfield.
Turcotte. Well, Byfield is a little bit too rich for our blood. I would say. Yeah, Turcotte is not exactly getting it done right now, but again, they're gonna have to take some kind of leaps of faith because right now
you got to target some guys to replace that talent that you're kind of lacking because they don't really have it.
Yeah, exactly. And I keep harping on the fact that they have two centers taking up around $15 million that bring no offensive dynamism, don't really affect the power play at all. You got to get somebody in here who can change that, who can be a catalyst in that regard. You're losing your best offensive catalyst in Giroux, and you really haven't even given Morgan Frost a chance to be what he should be, except last night we saw him on a wing with good players, which is where he should have been from the very beginning.
I agree.
And I'm done.
No, I think that's really well said. I like last episode, I think it was, the last episode we were talking about the Ristolainen potential signing. That's what I thought he was going to get, like $6.5 million. The $5 million is livable, but I thought he was going to get something more. I was about to lose my fucking mind.
A crazy contract.
I was about to lose my mind, but the essence of what I was saying, I was like, you're losing your most dynamic player. We need what Ristolainen brings. I do agree with that. We need what he brings. He's not an elite player, but I'd rather have him for $4 million. I don't think he's necessarily like definitely not a $5.5-6 million player. But I like his toughness. I like that grit. It's something we need, but it's not the top of our list. The way I see it, I'm like, it's the dynamic ability.
Center.
Yeah, we're getting worse. We're losing Giroux. And how are we replacing that? And it just doesn't feel like we are. And, we'll get into the Giroux trade talk.
Unless there's some sort of piece in that Giroux trade, that brings something like that back, or that, this top 5 pick that they might potentially get. Other than that, if you're going to go into free agency and look for high-end talent, I guess you could think to bring one of those guys, but who's to say they're going to want to come to a team that just had such a terrible season, right? It's a hard pitch. Especially to one of those guys, right? So we'll see what happens. I think that can happen.
I think legitimately, when they say retooling, it's really just a nice way of saying rebuilding. The Canadians are saying the same thing. Like every team that's losing says retool.
I'm not going to say it outright.
No, I don't agree with that. I have done some reading up on that. The Canadians, remember, don't forget, the guy really in charge there is Jeff Gorton. And what did he do in New York, right?
Well, yeah.
He's doing in Montreal now what he did in New York and what the Flyers should be doing in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. And I think they should have the same type of situation where you come out with a letter and just admit that we have failed and we got to step back and there's going to be some pain, but we are going to do this the right way. And I think, had Hextall done something like that, it might have gone over better. But the other thing, I just on Ristolainen, the only thing about Ristolainen for me is their defense is a mess. They don't have good decision makers back there. So you're locking yourself into a guy. You're getting what you could get from Eric Branson for under $2 million in Ristolainen. I think Ristolainen has more tools. Okay. But Travis Sanheim is an emerging player who's been their best defenseman. But what is that saying on the Flyers defense? So really what you're doing with Provorov having 3 bad years out of 4. In other words, every bad Flyers year has been a bad Provorov year, except for 20, which was a good year, right? So now he's going into season 7 next year. Is that what this guy is? I think Provorov doesn't think the game very well. So now you're relying on Ellis to prop him up. You're relying on Sanheim to prop Ristolainen up. And I think you're just setting yourself up for more failure. So now, to me, it behooves them, and I don't want to jump ahead of what you have there on your list, but it behooves them to make a decision about their top 4, and I think somebody has to go, and you need a professional defenseman in here. In case Ellis is not going to be there, I don't care what hand he shoots. I think they have a problem. Because if they are, it depends. Like if they want to rebuild, all bets are off. Just relax. Work your kids, get them, get the developmental process restarted, collect some talent, try to build a team. But if you're telling us that you think you just need a couple moves and you're going to jump back into it, jump back into what? Are you going to be like last day of the season, hoping you can make the playoffs and then get blown out in the first round? Or you really think you could be a cup contender? Then they're truly delusional. So it's like, what is the goal? What kind of organization do they want to be? They've always been, we're going for a cup, we're going for cup contention. Now it looks like they've lowered their sights based on a lot of comments that I've, kind of gleaned from reading them, that they'll be happy to just get butts and seats with an exciting team and go make a playoff run. And if they get off and in the playoffs, then anything can happen. To me, that's never been the Flyers. And I don't like the direction they seem to be leaning toward.
Yeah, I
actually agree. Oh, go ahead, Yariv.
No, go ahead, please, Joe.
I was going to say I agree with a lot of what Isaiah said, because when it comes to rebuilding a team, you have to be truthful with your fans. And I think the big thing that Isaiah was hitting at that pisses off a lot of the people of Philadelphia is he used the word delusional. And a lot of times it does seem like the organization is a little bit delusional, because you think you can just all of a sudden miraculously be like the Ducks, but the problem is the Ducks have 10 really great scoring, playmaking, offensive people. That's the thing you're missing. So that's not going to happen as quickly. Where when maybe the Brinks come up and everybody, if you cannot destroy them in development, then yeah, they can be those guys. But the thing is, this organization has to, one, like Briere said when he first came in, draft better and then develop better the guys that they actually draft that have a lot of talent, and they just screw them. And then the other part of what Isaiah said that I think is a good point is this is why I don't know if Fletcher's going to be the guy in the end, because I don't think he ever is going to be a guy to release a statement like that. I think that this is probably Fletcher's last offseason with the team. If they come in struggle before Christmas next year, I would say he's gone by then. And then the next guy might be the guy that comes in like Jeff Gordon and goes, you guys have to be truthful with the fans or you're just going to lose all respect. And nobody's going to care what comes out of your mouth, left or right. Nobody gives a crap anymore because everyone lost all respect. So I think Briere they hired, that's a good first start because everybody respects Briere, and he actually said the right things on pregame live, I think, when he was on there. But he's one of the only people I've ever heard actually admit we have to draft better and we have to develop better. That's not said that much in this organization. So I think what Isaiah was saying, admit your flaws and say to the team, we have to adjust and do that. That's spot on. And the other thing he said is also spot on. Every team, and I think I've said this on this podcast too, but I know I said it on most, every good contending team has just a guy that might not be the best at pushing the pace defensively, but is just a very good defensive in the zone defenseman. Well, who is that on our team? Like, we don't have a guy that's just stay in the defensive zone and be a great defensive defenseman, Pesce-esque defenseman or something like, not even to the level of Brett Pesce, but just somebody that
Ryan
is
Ellis.
that game.
But he's hurt.
Well, we have Ryan Ellis. That's a good point. But Ryan Ellis is good. Do we think he'll be healthy enough to be the defenseman that we want him to be? That's the big
question mark for them all season, maybe, and next season too. If he's healthy, it's a whole different thing. But if he's
is that
if
a
he's
plan?
Not,
Is that right?
Not really. Yeah, not at all. Right.
That's not a good plan at all. Yeah. Oh well, if he's healthy, we have a great guy that can be good in our own zone. That's why I like the Ellis trade at first, but now looking back at it in hindsight's 2020, I don't think the Flyers paid attention to the medicals enough. And that's just what it seems like at this point. But that's my own opinion.
Well, they also traded two guys with their own medical history.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah,
they might have known that, but I mean, like Nolan Patrick just got reactivated after hurting his head. What, 2 more times this year?
Yeah, exactly.
Phil Myers had his own injury problems, especially when he was playing for us. To your point, Isaiah, this might upset you that I'm saying this, but I think the Ristolainen signing was their insurance. This sounds stupid saying, was their insurance for Ellis not being around.
It seems like it, to be honest.
That's how I interpreted it in a way. I know it's not good enough. Like, I'm not saying it's good enough, but I think it's some degree that they're like, all right, well, at least we have the 3 of them. And I know that sucks. But that's not what we want to hear. Go ahead.
When you have this expanded analytics department, and I know that the team's analytics are not the same as the analytics you see publicly, with Top Down Hockey, JFresh, whatever. But I mean, they are so abysmal. I don't know how they could come to that decision.
So here's my thing, okay? Because I look at the Flyers under AV for that first year. God, it seems so fucking long ago now. When they were successful, it's not a more talented team that was more successful under AV. He did get them to buy in. Whatever happened in between there, I have no fucking idea. How things went from looking like a promising team to just completely collapsing and being irrelevant. I don't know, but I do think that they're like. I don't think Provorov is. I still believe in Ivan Provorov. I know that I'm not in the majority anymore. I know that most people are turning on him. Still the youngest defenseman of this group. And I think it's fine that he's struggling, at least to a degree. It can't last forever. Like, otherwise you do have to move on. But I'm not ready to give up on Provorov.
I also think, Yariv, just real quick on Provorov, he's kind of the Talbot defenseman. The Flyer, how the Orioles, how the Oilers said the wrong sport, made Talbot just play all those games as a defenseman. The Flyers gave Provorov every task at the age of 21.
Yeah,
20,
which
whatever.
Is tough for a developing player.
That's tough to develop when you're doing when you're thrown.
You need a support system.
I don't disagree. Right? And he had one really good partner, right? And his career went up. When Ghost was playing well, he put up really good numbers. We saw what happened. We put Ellis with him. Like, I still believe in that. Is he the guy who's going to carry a team?
Probably
I don't think he hasn't proven that. Is it possible? It's still possible. I don't know. But your point is definitely taken. There's something incredibly wrong with the way this team plays hockey. Like, we watched Shane Gostisbehere, and I know he's not like the best defenseman in the league. He's playing on a bad team. He is successful there.
Yeah, he's doing a lot better.
Successful offensively.
Sure.
Defensively.
No, not really.
Yeah, but look at our guys defensively too. We have better guys defensively, and they're playing just as bad as he was here. It's just like,
well, except for Sanheim.
Well, yeah, he's the only one who's excelling.
Who is with Risto, and that everybody
that's dragging him down.
But
this is why you're digging yourself a deeper hole.
I don't know though, because I feel like Risto kind of helps Sanheim play to his game in certain respects. So that's my perspective on it.
And that's what I think Provorov is missing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're the guy, you're talking about a player who was drafted, what was it, 8th or 9th overall?
8th, I think.
7th for Provorov.
Yeah, I don't know who we're talking about.
So we're talking about a guy in his 6th year.
Risto.
So next year, he'll be going into his 7th year, and he still needs help to perform at even an average level. I mean, he's below average defenseman right now. He really is.
Yeah, he's not playing well.
And he thrives on more minutes that he really doesn't even deserve. And I think part of the problem is that they needed him so much because they didn't really have an alternative. He was rewarded in a way he should not have been rewarded. He should have earned his ice time. But he got it by default. So now,
but he was the best defenseman too.
Yeah, but for a couple of years, he showed, his first couple of years are pretty good. And he showed promise, and then he went down. Then he came up, and then his last 2 have been not so good.
But look how the team is played. That's the only element I'll say.
But he stands out. I think he's third from in the league in turnovers or giveaways.
Yeah, but he plays the most, and the team's playing like guard. Look, I agree he's playing poorly. There's no disagreement about that. I just think I see a young defenseman. I see a team who's struggling, and I just don't see it as like
pin it all on him.
Yeah, like Chychrun was struggling immensely. Now, well, obviously he's injured.
I just think at this point you have Ellis. You have Ellis, right? He might not come back nonetheless. You might as well at least try at this point. Okay, Provorov's value's at its lowest. You might as well try to let them play together, let the value rise, then trade him if you're going to move him. That's my perspective on it.
Well, he looked very good.
Let me give you a different perspective. Okay, this is the way I look at it. I'm not going to play Moneyball at this point. If I back myself into a corner, which I think is stupid, okay, the preface is it's stupid. You should rebuild. That's what they should do. That's my position. Okay. But
either way, you're going to be bad. I mean, you know what I mean? Like next season, either way, you're going to be bad. So like you might as well wait and trade him.
Well, they don't think that way. They think they're only a couple moves away.
Well, yeah, I hear you.
Everything I'm about to say is predicated upon the delusion. So, let's go in Never Land. And all the people that believes in, Dungeons and Dragons and all kinds of crazy stuff. And we think that the Flyers are going to be really good next year. And we're backing ourselves into a corner by saying Provorov has to be in the top 4. It's untenable. You can't, if you want to get back in the playoffs, you can't rely on Ryan Ellis to be healthy. If that is your plan, because everything's
based on track record,
everything is just going to crumble if he's not there. You're going to get 65 to 70 games out of him max. And then what are you going to do? By signing Ristolainen, what they did is basically lock themselves in their top 4, because they're not going to pay a guy who's got a third pair defenseman, like he actually is a third pairing defenseman, for $5 million. So now, in my way of thinking, if this is the deluded mindset that you have, we're a couple moves away, and I'm like, okay, keep believing it. Keep saying, well, I don't know what they're sniffing. But if you're sniffing that stuff, okay, you have to trade Provorov and upgrade that position. You can't worry about that he's not worth it. Was Ristolainen worth getting rid of Gostisbehere and throwing a pick with him and trading the first-round draft pick and Robert Haig, and what was the second-round pick on top of that?
Something else as well. Yeah.
Look at all the assets they moved to get a guy who is like a third-pairing level defenseman, okay? And you're paying him $5 million. And I like that. Don't get me wrong. I love the guy. He's not Andrew McDonald. He has a better skill package. He affects the game in a subjective way, in obvious ways, right? So we like that. But if we're going to keep it real, they have forced themselves into a situation that they truly think they can turn it around. They need a better defenseman who makes better, calmer decisions with the puck and can impact the power play, not Ivan Provorov. And they got to get that guy, in my opinion. And they have a problem on top of that at center ice, where they have no dynamic element at all, and they don't really have any prospects that can hold down that position without a coach losing his mind watching Morgan Frost make one mistake after another. And Morgan Frost is not an NHL player yet. He's an NHL talent. He's not an NHL player yet. So, I mean, this is quite a quandary they've set themselves up to have to challenge and have to take on.
Well, that was my thing when we traded for Ryan Ellis. And again, I don't dislike the trade, but I was kind of like, we made a decision to get older. We had a bad year, and we made all these decisions to hamper ourselves cap wise, and I think this is what drives everybody nuts about the Risto signing, is that people expected us to just free up as much cap space as possible. It is extremely valuable, right?
Yeah.
And then kind of go into the offseason, go into the draft as many young guys as you can, and then see what you can get. See if you can get an impact guy, right? Like a Johnny Gaudreau in free agency. Don't worry about the little details of I need a third pairing defenseman and I need a fourth line. That stuff is fucking irrelevant. Get an impact guy. It's that's kind of what I think everybody was expecting, and they're clearly not doing that. I'm still in the minority where I have not given up on Provorov. I don't feel that way about him, though I understand why you do. I'm not saying that I think you're saying anything crazy. I just see a very young defenseman. He's the youngest of the group, and too much was put on him, and he hasn't had a real partner. And when he does have a real partner, he does well. Now, is he the number one guy? I don't think most defensemen at 25 are the number one guy. Doesn't typically happen. A lot of guys have moments of it and then kind of crumble until they, have a great team around them. I want to find out what's wrong with this team, though, Isaiah. To your point, like I agree with you on the D, and I am sketchy on the Risto. And you can ask like Vasili. We were like, I was like, we should trade him. We should keep him. But I thought we were signing him for less.
I thought we should trade him, but I mean, the fact that they kept him for $5 million, it's not the worst deal. It's not the best deal, but they need the cap space more than they need Ristolainen, I would say. It's
like we need what he brings, but we all know what the problem is, and the problem is dynamic ability.
It's still not. You still don't have that top line center by signing Ristolainen.
And you're about to lose your most dynamic player.
Yeah.
So, or a dynamic player, even forget center, like Yariv said, Johnny Gaudreau or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That.
But either way,
Tarasenko.
Yeah.
Somebody
who can make a difference. Someone who can make a difference on a nightly basis. Someone who the team has to worry about. Like let's say if you're playing the Flyers and you're a team, who are you keying in on? Like once Claude Giroux gets traded. Well,
it's Couturier, but he hasn't played. When he was playing, he was injured.
That's what I mean. Like, who are you keying in on as a defense? Okay, this is the guy we have to stop, right?
Nobody.
Like that's nobody, that's the problem. So,
I mean, their power play is their offense. Their power play is a perfect summary of what their offense is, and it's a big zero, a big cipher, nothing. And to me, a center that can't drive that on a power play is not a factor on a power play. To me, is not a number one center. I think Sean Couturier is like a 1.5 C. Hayes is like a 2.5 C, and they have to get somebody at least at a second line level who gives the Flyers kind of what Nick Suzuki is giving Montreal right now, at a minimum. A dynamic player who is that level player. They need that. And then you can live with the problems that Hayes and Couturier bring, because they have assets as well. It's not all negative, okay? The only all negative on the Flyers really right now is probably Yandel and the minor leaguers. The guys they picked up on the street that they're so reliant on. That's another thing about this team. The idea that we needed those guys so badly, to fill in the gap. And I've spoken to a lot of people who, like, we had Dennis Bernstein on the O&B, and he never liked our defense. He said even if Ryan Ellis was healthy, so I don't like that defense in Philly at all. And you remember Keith Jones, Hartnell, and Bundy, Chris Therien, all at various times have really kind of like slagged the Flyers. Like, they're not that good. The power play, there's just something missing. Awful. And it's just they need it. To me, it begins there. I mean, structure, keeping the puck out of your net. There's no doubt that's a whole thing. But they have to have, like you guys are saying, who on the Flyers are you really worried about? Like, we have to deny this X player this part of the ice, like a Stamkos on the off circle, or a Tarasenko, his version. There's nothing there. But those players are also not the biggest play drivers. So that's another issue as well. And they don't have any speed. They don't make and receive passes seamlessly too. So there's a lot going on here. It speaks to poor coaching, poor development, and the players not showing up and being attentive to detail. This organization has fallen apart, and I wish more people could see it for what it is, and stop hanging on to, well, we just need a couple moves. A couple moves to what? No. Why don't you go and watch Vegas, and watch Colorado play, watch Florida play, watch the best teams in the league, and
light years ahead. I
mean, they are right. The Flyers are playing. It's like AHL hockey versus NHL, really. And I agree with everything you're saying, literally. And honestly, I think you said it really, really well. That my whole thing is like, I still don't know why we're getting less out of the talent we have, though. Like, I agree with everything you're saying, but it's like, it's a compiling thing where it's like, yeah, we don't have the elite guy, but we still shouldn't be like this fucking bad. It's like
Shane Malloy. When we had Shane Malloy, he thinks that, he is really, really a top prospect guy, right? He's into the analytics. He's into, the eye test, the whole 9 yards. He's going for his PhD at a university for he's going to write a hockey thesis and all this kind of thing.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, he's a real interesting guy. Yeah, he's a very impressive guy. He says the Flyers' developmental process is one of the worst in the league.
That's what it seems like, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem great. That's for sure.
He says a guy.
I would agree with that from covering the games too, because covering the Phantoms games, talking to people.
Yeah. I was just wondering. wondering what they're doing with the lineup decisions. Like, why do you have, why is Ratcliffe not up after a good handful of games? Why do you have Mayhew in? Like, what's really the point?
I want to hear what the rest of Isaiah had to say. I'm sorry to cut you guys off, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Vasili's onto something, because I was talking, I was on with Steele and JJ, Jim Jackson today, and we were talking about putting these young kids in better positions as part of the idea of development, improvement, and things like that. We see that Isaac Ratcliffe clearly, even in just a cup of coffee, showed that the organizational and the structure of the NHL game is more suited to what he does. Okay, so why not get him up here and put up with his warts, especially after the trade deadline? Why not have Morgan Frost, like I mentioned earlier, on the wing, getting confidence and doing what he's good at? What compelled you to draft Morgan Frost? His offensive game, his playmaking, and the way he did a lot of things that were reminiscent of Claude Drew when Claude was drafted. And also when you think of what they're doing with Cam York, why is he on his offside? Yeah. He's on his offside. Now I know he's playing with Provorov tomorrow night or Thursday night. But really, it's because of Yandel, because they made a devil's bargain with Yandel. A guy they can't stop. They can't take him out of the lineup. He probably won't take a trade because there's a no trade. This guy is barely playing at an NHL level, and it is effing up the development of Cam York.
But what?
These are like idiotic mistakes. And I think even at the level when I see what's going on in Lehigh Valley, and they got to get some guys up here. And they should be getting them up here. The best way to send a message, instead of telling guys you're going to give them less ice time and all that, let actions speak louder than words. There's about 3 or 4 guys on the Phantoms right now should be getting a look. Maybe Wyatt Wiley. Lena Sandin should get a longer look. And you could probably name some other guys. Lisinski, obviously, as soon as he gets in shape, should be up. Wade Allison, he's born under a bad sign, perhaps, but still, he's an NHL level talent.
Game player. He's scoring every game down there.
He's just, and he has something that they lack, right? That Elan, that spirit. So I think right now, what the Flyers need to do is do a better job with the drafting and development in terms of coaching skills, everything. And they bring in a guy like Mike O'Connell from LA, right? He's the first guy that said Ratcliffe has to play more physically. And not to the detriment of his hands, not to the point where he's playing on a fourth line. Well, I like Patrick Brown, and Zach McEwen's a nice story and all that, but really, those guys can't generate anything. They can't. Yeah.
Offensively,
right. No. Right. So that's the problem. People say, "Oh, your fourth line. What are you worried about? Your fourth line? My fourth line. I can't do anything much on my first 3 lines. I better try to squeeze as much out of every line as I can."
Yeah.
So this is where I'm coming from in terms of with the failures of the organization, on top of the fact that they probably drafted a lot of the wrong people. We know that. Anybody can go back to a draft and say, "Oh, well, Aho was there and they should have, they should have picked him instead of Konechny." And that's easy to do. But it makes you wonder whether some of these guys that aren't going to make it maybe could have been salvaged.
Yeah, well,
I agree with that, because I was just going to say, from covering some of the games for the minor leagues, this team has, and we saw Willman grow from ECHL to AHL. So there's different guys that go through the cracks. So how do you scout the diamond in the rough guys almost sometimes better than you actually develop guys that are supposed to be easier to develop because they have the great skill already?
I'm sorry to cut you off, Joe, but it's the Van de Velde effect. Like, Max Willman is a guy who does everything well, nothing great.
Yeah.
They love those guys. They love putting them in the NHL.
But they also develop them better in a sense of putting them in the right spots. Like Hayden Hodgson, for example, is a guy that's physical, kind of a minor league Tom Wilson, but he's not going to be great in the NHL. If you come up, he'll probably be like a third liner that'll hit people, score a few goals, maybe 10 goals or something if you have him up for a whole season, a few more.
But be an NHL player if that was the case.
Yeah, he's developed at a better rate because they put him in the chances to succeed, where Ratcliffe gets put on the fourth line
in the AHL.
In the AHL.
I have noticed that.
And then you have other guys get put down low, whether it's Sandin or others, and you're like, well, Cal O'Reilly's already great. He's one of the best AHL players of all time. Adam Denning's one of the better offensive defensemen in the AHL of our generation. So those guys don't need to develop more to play more minutes.
I agree, and they're playing them top line center.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where you need to get, like Isaiah was saying, Exactly. And you got to get what Isaiah is saying, which is spot on. Move guys up because they'll do it sometimes. Like Bunneman will have a great game. All of a sudden, he'll move up and start bashing people around the ice for the Phantom on the third line instead of the fourth. And then they move Ratcliffe up for one game. But then it doesn't stick for some reason because that's what Isaiah was saying. The Flyers development makes no sense. If you look at other teams' AHL team, other than if you just don't have the young guys to play, like Bakersfield with Oilers just doesn't have as much young guys they could play up in the lineup. Usually you play guys up in the lineup so they can grow into the role they're going to play in the NHL. Ratcliffe plays a completely different role almost in the AHL, and then he gets caught up to the NHL, and he is actually able to do what he should have been doing his entire life. So, like, that's more why I completely agree with Isaiah. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's almost... Oh, sorry, Joe.
Go ahead. No, what were you
saying?
I
was going to say it's almost not playing to like guys' strengths. It's like, well, you have Keith Yandel on a 1-year deal and he's going to be gone. Why don't you just play him on the right side and at least let York play on his natural side since he's going to be here, and that would foster his development. You could argue that's the easiest decision ever. Just say, well, Keith, you're not going to be with us moving forward, right? So,
well, Keith Yandel, I think we're also just playing because Isaiah said it's because of the streak. Well, let's be honest. Unless if Phil Kessel stops playing hockey anytime soon, or gets injured for the first time in his entire career, and it's not like he's a guy that cares about staying in shape off the ice. I've watched so many stories about how funny he is off the ice. He just wants to play hockey and then go eat nachos and have a great life. So, and he hasn't got injured. So if that doesn't happen till then, he's going to break Keith Yandel's record anyway, and the Flyers are keeping this guy that, like Isaiah said, isn't an NHL level defenseman anymore in the lineup for no reason. Because his record's not going to stand when it's all said and done, unless if something, knock on wood, hopefully doesn't, but happens to Phil Kessel. I mean, the guy played a shift and then went to go see the Broncos. That's how committed he is to setting that record. So he's going to set that record. He's
going to, yeah.
And no matter what, unless if he gets injured. So that's why I don't agree with playing Keith Yandel from that premise either. He should just be benched. The streak's not going to be his in the end anyway. Yeah, and then let different guys play.
What message does that send to the other players? When they see a guy who can't get from point A to point B in a reasonable amount of time, and
it just says anything I could do isn't as bad. That's what I would look at it if I was a player. I'd say, well, look at him, he's playing, so I can't be any worse than him. So,
well, look, the players are aware of inequities. They've experienced them at every level of hockey, but this is really to an extreme. This team is humiliating themselves like at least once a week, it seems like. And I know the effort's been there.
But he's minus 33. Just
he stinks on ice is the perfect way to say it with him. I mean, it's an embarrassment that they are still keeping this charade going when I'd rather be looking at York and even Wiley or even Clendenny. I mean, he'll give you
even Hoberg's been pretty good down there, and he's a lefty. So
yeah, I don't care.
Anybody,
you know what? They should be developing guys that are maybe less talented but can play on their offside because there's still many more left-handed defensemen, and this league existed for a long time with guys playing on their offside all the time, and they make such a big deal out of it now. And this is one of the reasons why they got kind of pigeonholed with the Ristolainen too. Oh, we have to have a right-handed guy.
It's funny because I'm just looking at his stats. In 2013, 2014, he was a minus 23. And then 2014-15, he was a minus 32. But he had 53 points the first year and then 41 points in 63 games. So, at least he was contributing offensively. Yandel. And then even for Florida last year, before they bought him out, he had 3 goals, 24 assists. He was a minus 8, 27 points in 56 games. In 59 games, he has 15 points for us at minus 33. It's also compounding when this is the problem with Keith Yandel too. He's fine if you're a good team. You're like, okay, we can carry him, play him 11 minutes a night, give him second unit power play time a little bit.
Good,
but that's the problem is that we're not good. And then you put a guy who's not good at defense on a team that's not good at defense. And it's
on the first power play too.
Yeah,
for some reason.
It's just like it's compoundingly worse. And that's why I got upset at the Yo thing because I was like, our power play stinks, and even in 4-on-3 in overtime where speed, and I heard other people saying this online, completely agree with them. When speed is the name of the game in overtime,
It's got to be York or Sandheim in that position.
You put Yandel out there. He's the slowest guy. Go ahead, guys.
It's got to be York or Sandheim in that position instead of Yandel. I don't understand it from a coaching perspective, but I don't know.
Was that Yandel by the boards like a couple games ago?
Yeah.
Just got completely beat.
Turnstyled. Yeah.
And
I disagree. I think he's not even an NHL defenseman anymore. I think he is really a seventh guy.
Well, yeah.
Yes,
it's more based on the cachet at this point, right? Like it's the whole cachet of his career built up. That happens with tons of guys at the end of their career. You see them stay a little longer than they should have probably. And that's the case with him. Yeah.
He's worse than Gustafsson.
In a lot of ways, he is.
He is. And Gustafsson was really bad here.
Yeah. But Gustafsson was, I mean, he was Olay, it was.
Exactly. That's a great way to describe him. The Olay in the defense. Oh, crap, I missed the puck. Oh, it's on the other guy's.
Oh, he literally did that time and again. And yet the Flyers were able to get something for him,
It was the seventh, right? We got
seventh from
Montreal. They drafted some guy from Magnitogorsk.
The sad thing is, I don't think they could even get anything for Yandel at this point, if they wanted to.
Only if a team legitimately wanted a guy that they're like, he won't get injured. And we have a veteran guy in the locker room. Like you're literally just trading for the locker room presence with him, which could happen, but you're getting future considerations. You maybe could get a 7th round pick, but unlikely. But I could see them moving in for future considerations. I don't really know what would be the.
But he has a no trade. He probably doesn't.
Oh right, he probably doesn't.
You're right. I forgot about that.
That is true.
I forgot about the no trade clause. You're right. Yeah. Well,
the guy's here to retire. When was the last time you ever saw a guy make like almost a league minimum amount, like $900,000?
And get a no trade clause.
Get a no trade clause.
Dude, I've never seen a defenseman play this poorly and not get benched.
Yeah, that's.
Can you guys think of any Flyers defenseman that has played here that has played this poorly?
But that's what I'm saying. That goes back to some of the
Brandon Manning with Dave Hakstol.
Yeah.
No, he got benched at times.
He did get benched at certain times.
He did get benched at times, but Dave Hakstol had a man crush on Brandon Manning.
Yes.
McDonald played very poorly, but
not this bad.
Not this bad. McDonald's bad, but he wasn't this bad.
McDonald was a number 6 defenseman. Yeah. Right? Like
Yandel's not even an NHLer.
It's like a number 9 defenseman.
At his peak, McDonald was like a number 5. That's why that was such an albatross contract, is that you signed a guy who had literally nothing about his. And again, I don't despise him, but he had nothing about his game that stuck out. Like nothing. Well, you can't even say he has the physicality of Risto and the impact. Nothing.
You know why they signed McDonald? Because they blew it on draft day when they passed on either Brodin or Dougie Hamilton, and then they blew it again by trading JVR for Luke Shen.
Well, they took Couturier instead of Hamilton, I think.
Well, yeah. Now I'm saying by not doing that.
Oh, well,
they never had a defenseman.
Yeah,
they've been trying. They have been trying to backfill that position, and this is what happens. You make one. Look, I like Couturier and all that. They really needed a defenseman, and let's be honest, Couturier took a long time to unwind and to develop as a player. They probably rushed him. Probably would have been better after his mono season to go back.
They rushed him. They rushed Lawton.
They rushed everybody. Lawton had to remake his whole game. But I'm just saying. This, if you trace the origins of Andrew McDonald, they actually go to draft day 2011.
Yeah.
And this is how you get yourself in a hole. You blow it on draft day, and then you make another bad trade, and you get rid of JVR, who had his best years in Toronto.
You paint yourself in a corner.
And they get Luke Shen.
The Steve Eminger trade.
He's another guy who got. Oh yeah,
I forgot
John
about
Carlson. John Carlson's sitting there. They're happy. Oh, we got Lucas Spiza. We're so happy. We'll trade him. We'll get Eminger.
We did trade Spiza for Pronger, so I can live with that.
But
that's a good point. Yeah,
they wouldn't have needed Pronger if they had Carlson.
Yeah, John. True. Yeah, we missed out on Carlson. Look, there's no doubt that this team has made mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But the essence of what I look at is like I look at the Montreal Canadiens. Okay, they brought in St. Louis, a guy who clearly has revitalized that locker room. Montreal's still not a good team. Don't get me wrong; they're not going anywhere. Even with their win, they're not going anywhere. And if they have the same roster next year, they're not making the playoffs. But he's getting more out of the guys that he has. And before we go out and invest in anything, including Risto, this is what kind of confuses me is like, first, I want to see the team play better as a unit. Like I want to see the culture fixed where guys are giving it their all every night.
But
Then I'm going to go out and get you a big name. Go ahead.
Just to interject, like, I think it goes back to like all that Yandel stuff, and like what's causing this is if you're a player, you have to buy into the habits and the way to play the right, game on the ice to win. Obviously, they're not doing that. If you're, in the room and a coach is preaching something, but yet there's a guy like a Keith Yandel playing on the ice, where's the accountability there for you? And like, you know what I mean? As a player, where's the accountability?
There's no way they don't know. Like, they probably really like him, but there's no way they don't notice.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. They have to notice.
He's minus 33 in the season's not even over.
And it also goes back to, I think, just mental fragility, because when something happens with this team, and it's and this is for the last couple of seasons in general, once one thing goes wrong, it all spirals. So that's just a weak mind, like fragilely. And why are they like that? Why is it turning into that? That's a hard thing to pinpoint. Is it just how they are as players? Who knows? Like it's hard to pinpoint that. It wasn't happening under Vigneault at first, but then it started to happen. I don't know why.
Well, it's a culture. It comes from, like, ever since Pronger left, this thing has been unraveling. Yes. And there was never that alpha dog in the room to just say, hey, just calm the F down. This is what we got to do.
We got to go and play out.
I do think Niskanen was that.
And you actually traded the one guy that was the cursor out if he had to be.
Simmons.
Not saying it was a bad, Simmons, but also later on, Chris named his channel after. Jake was the one guy that would curse everybody out if it needed to be done, and basically say, "What the fuck are you all doing?" Get the fuck out. And then just so this is, they don't even have that anymore.
This is kind of my point. Is like, I feel like we keep singling out players, which is understandable, but at the end of the day, it seems to be like no matter who we put here, that stink seems to land on them too, to some degree, and that's why
it could be a top-down thing, organizational.
You literally say, and that's why I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, and I don't hate Chuck Fletcher, I really don't. But I can't help but think, and Isaiah, I know you're very experienced in the work world. You've worked at a lot of different places, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Most problems are top down. And if you can look at Chuck Fletcher, I don't know if he's a problem, I'm guessing, but that's the first thing I can think of. Just like you fire the coach when the team is losing, it's like, dude, they're taking on your personality. They're taking on your energy and your standards, whatever that is. Just like it happened under Hextall, right? Where he was okay being mediocre until he figured out his plan. Like, you see it, like Bill Guerin took over for Fletcher, and the team started doing better off of his attitude. We see this stuff happen. At the end of the day, that's what I worry about, that it's like, it's the energy of the leadership. And I'm not talking about Comcast. Like, I don't give a fuck who's paying for it. I'm talking about the guy who's running the team. And that's kind of what I'm worried about. And it's like, if you look at the deals that Fletcher has made, not all of them are bad. Not everything is bad, but he's not winning a bunch of trades. It's not like you're walking away and go like, I know Fletcher. Like, how many people are confident that we're going to get the return that we want for Giroux? How many people are?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I'm not very confident that we will, but I mean, time will tell. I think it's a perfect actually dive into maybe trade deadline.
Why is it come to the wire?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, Dave Scott has a bigger hand in this than people may be thinking. You know, I notice season ticket holders feel that way because, I mean, he's driving policy from that perspective. And it looks like they've made some improvements in that regard. But, you know, this is pointing toward my comments earlier about what kind of team you want to be. Do you want to compete for a Stanley Cup, or do you want to be an organization that just is good enough to get into the playoffs and hope things work out for you? And I think that's where the Flyers have shifted from the Ed Snyder era. And that's,
I'm not saying you are. I'm saying I hope you're wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, if you read some of the articles over the last little bit, someone in the organization, I don't know who it was, a Carchidi article or something like that, when they were doing a real breakdown as the Flyers were struggling to go through, it was either the 10 or the 13 game losing streak. And
either way, they're both bad.
Yeah. And the guy said, you know, we have to wonder what kind of organization are we going to be? If we're just making these moves to just get into playoffs, is that who we are now? Because we've never been that in the past. And I think that is a departure. And that really comes from Scott, and also from the urgency with the pandemic and everything like that, not having patience to doing what I talked about early on, which is to kind of admit that this whole thing is a cluster F, and they really got to step back, collect draft assets, and do a rebuild.
Is that 1 year?
It's all about
the year.
I was going to say,
Joe, go ahead.
Just because it's all about doing the right thing. Where I think the right thing for the Flyers, and I don't often, when it comes to the hockey side of things, ever lay a compliment on the Pegula family. But the one time I will give them some positive note is Jim eventually bowed out. He didn't even want Adams because Adams is friends with him. He knows he'll stick up to him and say, no, you're an idiot. That's not what we're doing. Where he formed a team to hire the next general manager and everybody because he said, I'm an idiot. I've done this wrong for all this time. Let me bow out, hire you people that actually know the sport in order to get it done. Dave Scott knows as much about hockey as this humidifier.
Yeah.
So he should hire somebody else to run the hockey stuff, get a team so they can hire the right GM, have, like Isaiah said a while back now on the show, but the guy that can come out and say, this is where we're at. We failed. We understand we failed.
Isn't that what they did with Fletcher? I'm sorry to cut you off, but isn't that like the whole Bobby Clark hired Chuck Fletcher? You know, like that's why he was defending.
They kind of did it, but at the same time, Bobby Clark is so Philadelphia Flyer former GM himself. It didn't have the same feel where the Sabres had like former players, alumni, like a bunch of different stuff involved. Not a guy that actually was the general manager of your team in the past. Pick who he thinks should be the next. So it had a little bit of a different feel to it, but I do see what you're saying.
Yeah,
but
go ahead. Sorry.
My other flip side, just because we talked about playing guys out of position, before we go into the trade deadline, and this is a question for all three of you, because we talked about the power play sucking. Wouldn't it make the most sense to have Sanheim as the number one power play guy and just let York develop as the number two power play guy? Because we know have York's.
Yo said something. He's like, every time we put Sanheim, because I agree, but he's like, every time we put Sanheim on the power play, the rest of his game struggles. That's what I read. Yo said.
But you haven't put on the power play like full time. Yeah. He did say that, but yeah, they haven't even put him on the power play in the last season and a half, like consistently. So how would you know if his game has struggled recently anyway? So that's the thing.
Can you make the same case about Yandel?
Yeah, I just don't understand. Like, I agree with you, Joe. Like, I would put Sanheim at number one in the power play. I'd put York at number two. And
our power play's terrible. What's the risk?
Yeah, it's a simple reason. That's exactly what I was going to say. The power play is 30th in the league, and you're not anywhere close to a playoff spot, and you're a bottom five team. Why not? The team's terrible. So no matter what you're doing, it hasn't been working. So you might as well just do anything at this point just to see, as we were saying, because, I mean, why not try to develop things, see what you have for next season, or see what you have potentially going forward. So at least you have a direction saying, okay, well, we know Sanheim can play the first power play because we saw in 20 games that he put up decent numbers. So we could keep him there for next season. Or we know York looks like he could be that guy for us in the future. But if you never do it, how are you ever going to know? And then how are you going to, build your team and build a plan as to what you're going to do moving forward.
Also, it doesn't make sense because out of juniors and out of college for York, both of those players were power play step up on the offense type guys. And now I think with York, the Flyers might be pigeonholing him a little bit, which I hope is not the case, just like they did with Sanheim years ago, where they never let him grow what he's very good at first before they threw 865 other things at him, which is not obviously, like Isaiah hinted at earlier, the right way to develop something.
They got to bring a different coach in here, somebody that'll let these guys like have fun again. And I feel like it's been a long time since we had that. And maybe Laviolette might be the last guy that we really had. So let me ask you guys this, and then we'll move to the trade deadline. And Isaiah, if you have to drop at any point, it's totally cool. I know you have like a time limit, so you can just drop whenever you want or just whatever. But Provorov slated to play with York. We're talking about York seems to kind of finally be coming. Again, this is a lot of stuff where like, I don't know what the hell they're waiting for. They've been out of the playoffs for so long.
I would have done it a long time ago.
Yeah. Like
what's the point of playing? I mean, not to say anything against Justin Braun because he's played way above his level and you commend him for that. I mean, he's a veteran player. He's good in the locker room. There's nothing wrong with Justin Braun, but he shouldn't be playing at a first pair level. And that's another issue in itself, right? So I would have done it a long time ago because why not see, what York has there versus Braun, because you already know what Braun's going to be and you're going to trade him in a few weeks anyway. So does it behoove you to, keep him playing in a first pair role when you could play a younger guy and at least get him reps at the NHL level in those situations? I don't think so, but they haven't done it yet. They're going to do it now, which is a good thing that they're finally realizing, okay, maybe we were, not letting Cam York play to his strengths by playing him on his, on a third pair with Keith Yandel But we'll see, I guess, what happens with that in the future if they continue to play him there, even after Braun gets moved eventually.
Yeah. It wouldn't shock me if Provorov and York actually get a little bit less in the way of minutes.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. I could, yeah. Because it seems like they're playing Sanheim and Ristolainen as a first pair almost
more or less. I think, Provorov has earned less time, and I don't want to put that much on York, especially, now they're going to have York on his off side, exactly. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, listen, he's right there with Sanheim as a decision maker, but we'll see what happens. That's my big sticking point with a lot of these guys, so.
Yeah, I mean, they were playing. I agree with you. I think they probably will lessen York's ice time and probably give Provorov more PK time. Like he'll probably play a lot of PK time, and we'll take penalties because we definitely do. But they were playing York for like 22. Even I think he had a game where he played 24 minutes this season.
Well, yeah, he played a lot of minutes. That was like the Western trip when they had COVID. Like Provorov was up with COVID. And they had York in, but it was no choice. Like now when they have the choice to do it, they seem to be like hesitant to put him in those positions where it looked like he was succeeding.
I want to see some boldness. I want this team to be like, okay, I've said this for a while. You have an opportunity, take advantage of the shitty season, develop guys, put them in the NHL, play them. What are you worried about? You're losing every fucking game. You know what I mean? You have a veteran defenseman who's minus 33. What are you worried about?
Also, Yo talked about it when he got hired, about how he wants them playing in the right mindset, the right vibes, the right culture, whatever trigger word you want to use for it, while not promoting the right guys and downplaying the wrong guys is not going to ever promote that culture. Yeah. And not letting guys be truly who they are.
He's done a little bit of it.
Promote that culture.
I will say he's done a better job of it than AV was doing before AV was fired.
Still not good enough. Still not good enough. Yeah.
I think AV did a terrible job at the end. I think he did a good job in the beginning, but towards the end, I mean, like Lindblom, fourth line, young guys. Go ahead, Isaiah.
The pandemic broke AV. Yeah, he was never
whatever it was.
Yeah, that's it. In fact, I knew coming into this year. I said, at the end of last year, he didn't really want to. I wouldn't be surprised if he would have resigned.
Yeah, you were saying the same thing, Yariv. Like,
I was saying we should have fired him.
We shouldn't have brought him back.
Yeah, he shouldn't have been the coach this year.
He was done. It was like Lavi. That year, Lavi played coach for 3 games. He's just a dead man walking. A guy like that.
Should have fired him after 3 games. Sorry, go ahead.
When you're a player in a room and while my coach is defeated, how are you going to embody what he's telling you to do? Yeah. You know what I mean? If he gives off that in the first place, but
I totally agree with you guys in terms of the lineup. I mean, this is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I I understand it's before the trade deadline, but on Monday, after Monday, they have got to bring up about 4 guys.
I
don't care who sits. And I don't think the Flyers are going to get a bad reputation as an organization if they sit Keith Yandel at this point. If they're so worried about that in a season like this.
I bet they're hoping that they can trade him.
They probably are, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, how can anybody take the coach seriously when he obviously doesn't have the power to bench Keith Yandel when he's playing horrendously? And that's
I think he does have the power. I think he doesn't want to.
No, he doesn't. No,
you think he doesn't have the power?
No, he doesn't.
You think it's Chuck Fletcher telling him?
I think they made a gentleman's agreement, and they never thought he would crap the bed this badly.
I could see that because that goes in line with the no trade clause as well.
Of course.
So. It would make sense.
It's hard for point.
It's hard for us to know, obviously, what happened behind closed doors, but it would make sense why he's still playing at minus 33.
I mean, you're putting Cam York on his offside. You're trying to develop him. That means you got a guy that he's like a barnacle, an organizational
barnacle. And York
barnacle.
is good too. He's like so much better.
Get rid of him. And Yandel is like.
Wouldn't you rather see like York with like Sealer on the right side?
I would. I would.
Not that that's a
Yandel.
I would mix up Wiley and York into the lineup.
I would prefer Wiley over both of them. I just don't expect that to happen.
Those two should play together if they actually come up because they did a little bit. I'm just saying that from the minor perspective.
In a season where it's all going to shit, why not?
That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I would rather bring up Zamula, to be honest, just play them together. I mean, offside and all, but you know what I mean? Like, bring up a young guy like you're saying, like Wiley. What's the harm in doing
Wiley,
that?
it does have a potential to be a 6'7" guy.
Yes, it does.
Exactly.
And I don't think he has. I think he's a high floor, but a pretty low ceiling. I think he could be an NHL defenseman. Not great. Okay.
I would agree. Yeah.
I would spot him in like every second or third game and get a rotation going because the defense sucks anyway. And take a look at these guys, see who looks like they're overwhelmed in the moment, and see who doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wiley very much fits in the category of a guy that does everything good, but doesn't snap off at you when you watch him at doing one thing amazing, which I kind of hinted at this before. Every team needs that defenseman because you just know what he's going to bring every night because he's just going to bring that simplistic, keep it simple, stupid game and not make those ridiculous, crazy plays we see the Flyers making.
He's a good mid-round pick. Like, that's what you want to get out of your mid-round picks.
A guy who makes the NHL, he's in the bottom pairing role, that's a success.
Right. He's probably better than Sealer and Connaughton.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
At least it's more promising. Like, let's be honest.
There's something to look forward to with that move. There's something to look forward to with that move, or a move like that.
They have lost the fan base, like, at this point. Like, Isaiah, you know how positive and patient I am. Like, you see, I'm patient with I'm willing to put up with stuff, and my patience is gone. You know, so like where's the average Flyers fan? You know
typically too. Same with me. I try to look at it. Yeah, I try to look at it from, okay, well, at least we have Ratcliffe played well while coming up. At least when Frost, they let him play in his damn position. He's done some stuff. But even with this team this year, it's like, I like talking about that stuff, but you can't do it that much because there's like maybe 3-4 positive things you can touch on each time. And then it's all down Death Valley negative. Like, it's not even negative. It's down Death Valley negative.
You know what this season's represented best by? Was that a police dog that went to center ice?
Yeah.
Pissed on center
that is the best representation, I would say. The dog shitting on the logo of the Flyers.
That's it. The logo, you're right.
You know what? It's a Flyers fan who passed away, got reincarnated, turned into a dog, and said, "This is shit." Rough. And maybe you would think they would get a message.
That was a tough
one. I like to say rock bottom is a great foundation to build on, but I don't know if we've hit rock bottom.
Yeah, I don't know at this point.
Jason Martinez said that on his podcast, and I was like, dude, it's so true. He's like, you know, I thought we hit rock bottom, but apparently not. It's like, yeah.
No, it's like the quote I brought up from Yeah, it's like the quote I brought up before you hopped on, Isaiah, about the Haley Steinfeld song about hitting the right side of rock bottom. The Flyers have hit every year they've sucked the wrong side of rock bottom, where whether it's a person or a team, usually when you hit rock bottom, that's when everybody goes, okay, we got to get our shit together, and we got to do X, Y, and Z in order to get back up.
Yeah,
which we used to do that, exactly, which is what Isaiah's hinted at about the culture back in the day compared to now, where nowadays all of a sudden it's,
like with Simmons,
hey, let's just keep going by the motions, let's play ping pong, let's play, I don't know, horseshoes in the freaking parking lot. Like, it's not like the same thing of let's get back committed to what we need.
But even back to like those Richardson Carter teams, like remember those Richardson Carter teams where they did terrible that 2010 season. They hit rock bottom, coach gets fired, and they turn it around. There's no motivation like that currently.
Well, it's not only that. I mean, they had the requisite talent. It was just getting someone to put it together. Here's the problem, though. It's when you supposedly hit rock bottom, then you respond by doing the right thing. And all we've had from management, this speaks to what we said earlier, because they can't see and they're delusional and they think they just have to keep making a move here or a move there. What happened is because it's delusional and it's not grounded in reality, they just keep making the same mistakes. And this is why it's never been corrected in this era. After 2012, when they made that horrible trade for Brizgalov and set the whole thing on fire, they really haven't been the same. And
I agree with that.
Hextall was brought in to change that, to take a more patient approach, and he missed on a couple things, and he had some off-ice issues as well in terms of how he dealt with the team, just everything. The culture of the team just melted away, and it's gone. And I think they need to take a broom and sweep this thing clean. And if they keep fooling themselves and thinking we're just a couple moves, you're a couple moves away from what?
Well, that's where I'm like, if we do something like that, that's where I'm like, all right, well, then let a guy like Risto go, which obviously is too late for that. Hold on to Sanheim, hold on to Provorov, and then let everybody else go. And like, they're pretty young. and then build up with those guys and start fresh. And then you're not going to be that good anyway if you remove all these guys. You find a way to get rid of Hayes, and you get rid of JVR and Atkinson. You could move him too if you wanted to. You know what I mean? Like you can still do that, but I don't see them doing that.
Yeah, they're not going that route at this point. It doesn't look like it at all.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say you see rebuilding teams play all the guys like he hit on the head, the Wileys of the world, et cetera, et cetera. Like I just pulled up Arizona just to get all the game totals for guys that I would consider like those level of prospects you have to develop to become NHL ready. A guy that I really liked in Switzerland in the World Juniors, Moses played 32 games for them. Let's see. Kyle Capabiaco is probably a third line, maybe a fourth defenseman, probably a third line defenseman, has played 23. And then Vladislav Kalashonik, I always mispronounce his last name, but he's played even 13, and he's a guy they didn't even think would play this year. But Dyson Mayo is a prime example. They put him in the lineup and said, kid, just do your thing at 25 years old after he was good in the minors for the last few seasons and beforehand, and he's done exactly that. He's now actually played a little bit on the first pairing. So, like, even a team that's run like a shitstorm and is going to play in a, like we talked about before, in a college stadium next year, even structurally, coaching-wise with Tourney and with their now newer management people seem to know to put guys in better positions than the Philadelphia Flyers. So,
yeah. So let's get on a trade deadline talk. We've gone over an hour and we've just been ripping into the Flyers, which is totally fine. I knew this would be a long episode anyway. So let's get into the first one and let's talk Giroux. So just to, I guess, bring it home, the number one, at least we thought the number one was Colorado Avalanche. They've already traded for Josh Manson, where they gave up, what was it? It was Drew Helleson. Yep, and a second-round pick. And then they actually traded Tyson Jost, who was another guy who was rumored to be in a package for, was it Nico Sturm? Right? Yeah.
And that frees up
Marco?
Was that I think it's Marco. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
that frees up 1 point. Yeah, I know, right? That frees up 1.3 million, I think, for them on the cap.
Yeah,
but that's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but I mean, it does remove one of their better prospects and a second-round pick and a guy, Yost.
When did Jost get traded?
Just this afternoon.
Yeah, this afternoon. He was just traded for Sturm. Like, I think it happened like maybe 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
Because he was rumored to be someone the Flyers were looking at.
Right. Yeah. It was supposed to be in that package. Now, I don't think that Colorado is out of the question or anything, but I did see that Elliot Friedman said that Giroux's number one is actually the Florida Panthers, which would probably leave an Owen Tippett option, which again, my thing is like, I don't really care about the amount of young players. Like I want the best one.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is a chance that a guy like Newhook is available. I don't know if it's actually going to happen or anything like that. But if a guy like Tippett is available, like that's a nice consolation prize to losing Giroux. That's a nice piece to build on. If we can get a pick on top of that, like a second round
or
pick,
even honestly, cool. I really like Denisenko. Like I did some research to his stuff and watched some of his stuff. If they could get somehow like a Tippett even as like a mid-tier and a Denisenko package together.
Well, wasn't that the rumor was actually pretty big? It was like Denisenko, Carlson and a first. Tippett. No, and
Tippett. Okay, so no.
Which I think sounds like too much.
It does, yeah. Then there would have to be. Then there would have to be no pick. But I mean, I think
yes.
Would Justin Braun maybe go along with Giroux?
I could see that. Yeah, I could see that
totally see that. 50% retain on both of them if you have to.
Yeah.
What do you care?
Well, I mean, just think about Giroux. Charlie O'Connor came up with a comparable, and I thought it was pretty good from 2018. Paul Stastny at the time was 32. Okay, so Claude is a little older now at 34, and still probably a better player than Stastny was. Although both have tremendous versatility.
Yeah.
Yes.
So back then, Winnipeg gave them, or St. Louis received a first-round pick, a B-tier prospect, and a fourth-round pick.
I'd say that'd be like a starting point. But the Flyers probably want a little more than that.
Yeah, because
I don't know if they're going to get it though.
Well, each market is different. For forwards, there's not a lot of premier forwards. If Hurdle is not available, JT Miller is not going to be available. That's only going to drive the price up, right?
Yeah, I would say both those guys are probably not available.
I think the Landeskog injury for Colorado, at least from their perspective, I don't know if they're looking to replace him. But I think that's interesting for me. But who knows what they're going to do now that they made those two.
Also,
it's really
Colorado's also been rumored to be in on Kane, not just Giroux. Where if you think Landeskog going out,
I can't see that happening. He makes $11 million a year.
No, money wise, it makes no damn sense. But then they'll probably start turning into the Lightning, and somebody will get miraculously injured. And then they put them on the IR. And then
Landeskog and Girard are out. I'm not sure about how long Girard is out, but if there could be a third team,
there could be
involved that will take cash. I heard that Arizona,
Seattle,
Buffalo,
Arizona, Buffalo,
and Seattle are three teams that will take. So it depends who they want. I'd rather have Pat Kane than anybody, but would he do it? I don't know, but. So
I can't see them trading Patrick Kane. I can see them trading Taves. But I can't see them trading Kane.
Yeah, but
I don't see them doing it. I was just saying from rumors, he's one of the top targets for Colorado.
Well, I've seen, I've heard some things. Of course, you hear a lot of things this time of year. But
sure.
Yeah, so I don't want Owen Tippett. He's very he doesn't win a lot of puck battles, from what I understand.
He's more of a shooter.
He's kind of one-dimensional. And we have a couple guys like that. I think actually Tyson Forster is someone who has a little bit more in terms of a ceiling if he develops. And we already have Atkinson. So now it's getting to the point where overemphasizing, I'd like the big body, want to get bigger. What does that mean? If he's a big dumb guy, what does it matter?
Yeah, he's not making.
I want new Hook on the straight up, like no additional assets. New Hook for Giroux. We get the young guy, you get the old guy for your playoff run. Like that's what I would ask for. Like that's
what they need. That's what they need.
Yes,
I would do the deal. Yeah, that's
no other picks. You don't need to give us a first. Just New Hook. He's a UFA anyway. Like the whole point. I
would even add a prospect.
If we have to, I'd be open to it for sure. Like
Herman Rubtsov. I know it's a tough.
No. I think that's completely reasonable. I mean, like I even thought about like what if Morgan Frost gets traded with Giroux and you get New Hook and maybe a pick back. Maybe you get.
I'd be open to that too.
Maybe New Hook and Barron. Maybe it's something like that.
I mean, they should be open to anything like that.
No, Frost will do better in Colorado.
I think for Giroux, the main thing has to be
Mac's doing great in Colorado. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
they're already starting to complain about his penalties. By the way,
for Giroux, the main.
That's his Achilles heel. But I mean, like in terms of production, at least he looks like he's actually playing the game at the Nicolas Aube-Kubel level he played 2 years ago. He's still an idiot penalty wise sometimes, but like you expect that from him. Where here he just was useless at the end of his run and he wasn't doing anything.
But no, I was just gonna say, Giroux, the main thing for them is you got to get either high end center, high end defenseman that can play either a first pair level or projects to be that, or a first line level, because that's what you're lacking, right? So it has to be at least one of those prospects that can project to be that, and then plus a pick at the minimum. So
that's tough. That's really tough for a rental. I think
it is tough,
I think
but that's what they're looking for.
A guy who's in the top 6 or in the top 4, I think is probably more.
That's their home run, though. That's what they're looking for, obviously. Like that's what I meant.
Yeah, it speaks to them. Maybe should have parted with G a couple years
with them earlier, which would
I told you it was just going to be like Jerome Iginla. They waited and they got spit for him, and it was a damn shame because Iginla was a Hall of Famer and they could have really cashed in. Calgary.
I think the Flyers will do better than Calgary did for Iginla. I think they'll do a bit better.
I think so. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what they get in the end.
This is also
Here's a couple.
Go ahead. No, please.
I was going to say a couple guys when it came to Florida, because you mentioned Denisenko. They have a couple centers. One actually played really well for the Checkers and has got an opportunity with them. Cole Schwintz, who's a former third-round pick. I'm not sure if they want to move on from him for that reason. Another guy that's kind of been in limbo, similar to Turcotte in LA, though, who I think can still be a good center, is just a smaller guy, is Heponiemi. So maybe you could get Denisenko and him, or Denisenko and Schwint. You got a center and winger. Yeah. That can kind of give you something there. I think Schwint might have the higher ceiling just because he's performed at such a high level at only 20. Rapiniemi's now at 23 and is still trying to find that, but I think they could both be pretty solid guys to have at center on top of a Denisenko as well. So,
I'm looking at the Marian Hossa trade because I think that actually is probably a good comparison for the Giroux. Wow. Wow. Did they get
what year?
What year was this? 2009.
Was this for the Penguins or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Hossa was in the prime of his career.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's kind of crazy how much they won.
Hossa's a much better player than Giroux.
They dominated. They got Marian Hossa and Pascal Dupuis for Kobe Armstrong, Eric Christensen, and Angelo Esposito.
And Esposito was a top notch prospect.
That's my whole point. Is like I don't want multiple things. I want one thing that I prize, and that's it. And then maybe it's not Newhook. Teams tend to not want to move guys off their roster in these type of trades,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So at the same time, we do
if
have
it's
to.
Byram, I mean, I'd be happy with that.
We do have to recognize how respected Claude Giroux is. Like you look at a guy like Timonen who's at the end of his career and we got 2 second-round picks for him, right? And he played 4 minutes a night. They didn't even bring him into play. Giroux is a guy who's definitely playing your top 6. He's winning you faceoffs. He's playing on your penalty kill. He's running your power play. He can do everything for you. And if you have goal scorers, he's going to help them score more goals. So he is a guy that I do think is worth a top pick or a first-round pick and a B prospect or something like that. That's what I expect from this. We'll see. I haven't loved.
Well, Yariv, I had a question for you off of that, though, because with Newhook is like that big pop guy already performing at the NHL. I really think, like we all said, Denisenko has a lot of talent. But is he a guy, because you haven't seen it fully at the NHL yet, you would even do a one-on-one swap with Giroux as much? Like, where would your stance be? Like, who would be your one-on-one swap guy?
Newhook for sure.
Compared to
with the Panthers.
Yeah,
that's why I feel like I think it's more of a package.
I don't know.
With the
I think you would have to be 2 for 1 with the Panthers because Denisenko's great, but just not to that level.
I mean, if it is a guy that it's a 1 for 1, then he's probably not in the NHL and he's probably in a system somewhere.
Yeah,
it's probably Samoskevich or somebody like that
it's
years away.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be so, and again, that would be fine too. But you got to walk away with promise. You can't walk away with like. I didn't hate the Wayne Simmons trade, and like looking back, everybody's really hard on. Wow, his name is escaping me. Why is his name escaping?
Hartman.
Yeah, Ryan Hartman. People were really hard on him, but he's obviously a pretty good player. He was never like great, but we got Simmons at the end of his career. Wasn't an impact guy. We got a 4th round pick. We didn't even handle that very well. That's not what I want from this Giroux trade. If that's what you're walking away with, just keep him, let him walk in the offseason. Like that, there's no point in doing that. Like you can get a Ryan Hartman in free agency. Like you just hold on to him. But I don't expect that. I expect that we're going to get at least something nice for it. It's never going to be as good as the players we're moving, most likely, unless we get lucky. And realistically, if Giroux really is meant to come back here, he'll re-sign in the offseason. Odds are we're probably moving on. Like I think if the Flyers really wanted him back, I think he would be signed.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only guy I would do dead up, I forgot it because he's been injured the last couple games, and I don't see Florida doing this in 800 years. But the only guy I would do dead up for Giroux is if for some reason we could convince them, oh, you're on a playoff run, you need Claude Giroux more than Anton Lundell.
But I don't think that.
I was going to say him, but I didn't even mention him because
I just figured he'd be somebody
trading a rookie of the year.
I don't think their trade. That would be stupid. He's already great offensively and is disgusting defensively. That was an A+ thing.
But they don't. That's why I was saying it's like Newhook is like a third. Like he hasn't broken out necessarily.
No.
You know what I mean? He's like on the brink of doing it, and that's where I'm like, okay, like you look at some of the trades that have been made. Like I think it's the level of frustration that we're having with the Flyers. I think it's easy for us to downplay, what Giroux really is, but from an outside view, like you have to look. He's a historically legendary player of this era. Is he a generational? No, but he's in that cut right below. He is a guy who is very well known around the league. He just won All-Star MVP. Like fans know this, people recognize this, and he's still got a lot left in the tank. He probably has 3 more years of putting up like point per game pace, especially on a good team, not a team that can't fucking score. Like how many assists would he have if our power play was decent? So I just think that like his value is still there, but again, it's up to our GM to get these deals done too. And I loved the Matt Niskanen trade. Like that trade was brilliant. You straight up won that trade. But I haven't seen a lot of trades like that from Fletcher.
Yeah, we haven't seen Fletcher win a trade in a while. I would say that you could.
That's my
concern. That might be the only one.
Yeah,
that might be the only one he really nailed.
Unless you consider our Atkinson for Voracek a win, which statistics-wise, it depends what you value.
That's
I guess.
even.
It's pretty even.
That's like an even. I consider that pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Atkinson for the Flyers' purposes than Voracek. It was
Atkinson's been great.
Anyway.
Atkinson's been one of the bright spots.
You know,
it's not a straight up win like you would say Niskanen for like a Gudis in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Flyers had a marginal, victory. I mean, with that, but I mean,
the salary
Jake's
cap
got a lot of
savings.
points, the salary, and the fact that Jake's only got about 4 goals or something like that. Even though he's got lots of points, I mean, $8 million for 4 goals or whatever it is.
It's not the best. No.
Atkinson's
and we don't have Patrick Laine. The reason Jake also has all those primary assists is because he's been on a line with one of the best snipers.
I will say this: he was a big play driver for us.
Zone entries,
and it's noticeable now that he's not here. We can barely.
I completely agree with that, but I'm saying he wouldn't have had anybody to have the points he has in Columbus. Even though Columbus isn't good, they at least still have Cole Sillinger who rips the puck when he's with him. Who scored a hat trick the other day, by the way, and they have Laine, so they have 2 guys that you can at least go, well, if he's with them, they're just going to fire the damn thing once you pass it to them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the other guys here. We have Martin Jones. He's had a decent season. I think he does have some trade value. I don't think most teams are looking on him like, hey, maybe it's the Leafs, that Mrazek's been awful for them, which I knew was going to be the case, by the way. I had no idea why they signed him, expecting him to be the guy for them. I don't know what they were thinking. He's a guy you can put around a team like Carolina who has great defense. Yeah, you can play Mrazek, but his positioning has always been terrible. It was terrible when he was here. It's terrible in Detroit. He's a skilled goalie, but he's not a sound goaltender or net. So maybe a guy like Jones would be some value to him. I don't really think he really nets anything more than like a 4th round pick though. Because he just can't be relied upon to be your number 1 guy, but he can maybe, supplementally, be your backup guy. Kind of like what Brian Boucher was to our, when we had Leighton, right? We brought in Boucher, which was our biggest thing. We just didn't have the goalie to carry us, because Ray Emery's career obviously was ending at that point to some degree. Rest in peace. But yeah, what do you guys think about Jones? Do you think he gets moved? Do you think the Flyers hold on to him?
Looking at the goalie market, I think they could definitely get a pick for him right now. I mean, look at the Leafs; they're desperate. Call Kyle Dubas right now and see what you can get. For Martin Jones, I would say with Jack Campbell out and then Peter Mrazek not looking very great, as we're familiar with in the past. We've seen that firsthand how that could be. So I would say,
first game and then
pretty much. I would say for the Leafs, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jones go there. Koskinen's been playing better in Edmonton, but you would assume that with Mike Smith having injury trouble, they'd want to shore things up. I think there's definitely a market to get. There's definitely a market. I would say that you could see Jones moved. I just don't know what it would be for. I mean, probably 3rd, 4th rounder. Something like that, but it's good to recoup those assets. I mean, you gave some up.
I would do it
this summer, so why not? Yeah,
move Sandstrom up. Who cares?
Exactly. See what some of those young goalies you have in the system that look like they could be promising.
What do you got to lose?
Pretty much.
Especially when in game 1, when Sandstrom played, the defense was Let's see. What's a nice way I can put this? Bad. I'll just say bad. And he still played really well in that game.
Yes.
You might as well give him another shot, see what he can do. Jones, I feel like, is probably, I would say, more 4th, 5th, just because, like, Yariv hit it on the head saying he's more of your guy that could be the prototypical backup, where that's why I think it's more of a 4th with the 5th. Even you would take a 5th round pick because that's more bad. It's better than nothing. Yeah. Where to just get a backup, the only team I might see giving you a 3rd, and I haven't looked at their picks to make sure they have them, but I'm assuming they do, would be Toronto, just because of how desperate Vasili just said. Peter Mrazek let a goal go in that was about 7 miles per hour the other day.
Night,
that I think all 4 of us would have probably stopped the puck. So I mean, like, there's that. So I think Jones is definitely a trade value. I would say more 4th, 5th round pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree. And the market is fluid because there are some injuries, but it was a pretty saturated market. To have Anderson out there, he'd probably be a better bet.
Good.
He's playing better. Fleury, that's a big decision. But Dallas has a couple injured goalies. They went from 4 goalies down to 2 very rapidly. So maybe the market is there for somebody like Jones. And I would say that 4th round or 5th round range is probably about right.
Yeah, I think so too. I'd be actually disappointed if he's not moved because I'm like,
yeah, why keep him?
What do you need him still for?
Exactly.
Yeah, what do you need him for? He doesn't
he reestablished some kind of value.
Yeah,
he's been to a cup final. Teams will look at that and say at least he has experience if a guy gets injured for us, right?
The one thing I would say about Jones too is he's one of those guys. Stats can be deceiving. I think he's actually played a decent bit better than his numbers show.
He's played pretty well. The team's been
he played good as a backup goalie.
That's why I would trade him. Is like exactly. He's gonna be UFA.
If you let's say hypothetically he was on a decent team and they had to put him in because of some sort of injury or something like that, he would probably look better than he has here.
I mean, they're talking about potentially bringing Fedotov over. It's
so
like
there's no reason to keep him.
And this is where I do agree with people. Like, get the assets you can. You might have to trade those assets for something else, like getting rid of JVR. I don't know.
Yeah.
But get as many assets as you can, and if not for this draft, go for next year. It's going to be even a better draft next year. So
literally,
I don't know. It seems important. All right, let's talk Derek Broussard. He's definitely had a really strong beginning to the season. He's had some struggles of late, but he's been all right. Overall, for his value, obviously makes, minimum
on the cap. Yeah.
I see no real benefit to keeping him outside of playing him over young guys to continue losing. And I think he's a guy who probably also has like maybe even a 3rd round pick option just because he was playing at such a high level for his salary. At one point, his salary is so low that I could see a team being like, he's a guy we can insert in our bottom 6. He's not going to cost much. He's not going to cost anything against the cap. And he can play somewhat of a 2-way game, can contribute offensively. I think he's probably on a really good team. He's a 4th line player. He's not playing, high up in the lineup like he is for us. But can definitely contribute. I mean, he's proven that. He's been their best offensive center if you think about it. Even Lawton, Lawton plays a better all-around game, but in terms of generating chances and looking like they can do something on the power play,
he's looked decent when he's been on the ice, like offensively. Yeah. I mean, the defensive side's a different thing. I don't know what pick you'll get for him. I mean, it's probably going to be in a range like 4th, 5th round.
I think 4th.
Yeah, something like that. Any team on a 4th line, they would be happy to have him for a playoff run. He's played tons of playoff games. That's the guys that, teams are looking to stock up on. Yeah, play wing, play center, pretty much any position for you if you need to. So they should have no problems moving him unless they didn't want to, which, as you were alluding to, why would they want to keep him at this point? It makes no sense.
And then as soon as assuming Lazinski's healthy at that point, call up Lazinski, get him back, and Lawton will be back eventually. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Broussard, to me, too, I think Broussard at this point of his career, like Isaiah was saying, will create more in the offensive zone right now than Tanner will win up. But Tanner's a more well-rounded player than Derek, too. Broussard's never been good at defense in his entire career. So saying he wanted him to be more aware in the defensive zone, you just don't know who you're talking about because he's never done that in his entire existence in the NHL. He's always been more of just a 3rd-line Swiss Army knife offensive center. But in terms of picks, to go off of what you said, Yariv, the last trade for Broussard, which I would do this if it gets us a 3rd, the Avalanche in February 25th, 2019, traded Brass and a 6th they got Brass and a 6th, excuse me, and then Florida got a 2020 3rd round pick, which then became
I would do that.
If we had to throw in a 6th to get a 3rd, I would do that too, to go up from a 3rd to a 4th round pick.
Easily. Yeah. I would definitely do that. And maybe that's in the cards. I mean, even if we get a couple 4ths, I would trade those 2 4ths to move up in the draft,
exactly.
Because we don't have a 2nd for this year or next year. So
you got to recoup that in some way.
Yeah. I mean, get higher picks,
especially with the way the 2nd round's shaping up to be, where there could be first round level talents.
Next year is supposed to be
23, right?
Yeah. With 23, it's looking really good. That's what I mean. They don't have a 2nd round pick that year. So They traded that away to I'm pretty sure to get rid of Gostisbehere. Did they trade around the
that's one of them.
I thought that was this year's pick.
Buffalo.
Did we trade away next? Did we trade away next year's? I thought that was this year's pick.
No, we traded both.
Away
one for Risto.
We did.
For a Ghost.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, the other one was
great move. For one of the
strongest
drafts.
Some of the strongest drafts coming up. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Love that stuff. That's what desperation does. And just so you guys know, Arizona won 6-3 against the Canadians tonight. So they are officially
so even they can be Montreal.
Well, they are 3 points behind the Flyers after their horrendous start.
They'll pass them, I would say. I would be surprised to see that, right?
Good. Let's get into that number 1 spot.
Yeah. And just make sure you go to tankathon.com.
I've been on there quite a bit. Sim
out
the
last 4 years we've been there, right?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ, this season sucks. All right. So let's get into the maybe I would say the easiest to move of the group. Maybe there could be other guys move, but I think these are pretty much our 4 names. Justin Braun. I think you literally could name at least 10 teams that would want Justin Braun.
Any team could use him.
His salary, his cap hit is $1.8 million. You can retain up to 50% of it if you need to. Every single team is looking for a solid bottom pairing right-handed defenseman who, quite frankly, is having a pretty good year amongst a terrible year for a lot of guys. Doesn't complain, doesn't get injured, is the same player every single night. Will lay his body out. He's definitely a playoff type of guy. And he's a leader in your locker room. Flyers gave up a good amount to get him. There is a chance that you can even get a little bit more than you think for him if there's a bidding war over a guy, just because of the value for the money. Maybe a second round pick is possible in this situation. Nothing above that, I would say, though.
Yeah.
Like not a second and a player or something. It'd either be a young player, second round pick, maybe a third player, a third round, and a B prospect or C prospect, something like that. But a guy who definitely has value. I do think the Maple Leafs are very interested in him, as well as other teams. But now that Manson is off the board, you got to figure that his value might have gone up even more.
Less options for teams to pursue, really. So
and again, he's having statistically even kind of a career year as far as offense.
And he's playing in a first pair role. So if you're looking at it as a team, you're thinking, well, if one of our guys gets injured, we know he can handle it. I mean, it might not be the best guy you want to put in that position, but he has played those minutes and is pretty recently. So it shows that. I think at least, for the Flyers, you're probably right there. Like a third round pick is most likely, and then a second, based on, if there's some sort of bidding war. But for Justin Braun to get a second rounder, because that's a great value deal for the Flyers, just because what did they give up to get him? I believe almost the same as a second and a third. Yeah. So you're basically recouping what you gave. So it's not.
That would be huge for us to recoup a second.
Yeah, because like we were saying, we lost the next 2 in the draft with those trades this offseason. So it's something that he's got to look to do, Fletcher. You have a bad team, you got to take advantage of that draft position that you have, right?
Yeah, and I would say, go ahead, Isaiah. You got it.
No, I was just saying, keep in mind that when you say that you gave a second and a third for him, you got 3 seasons out of him too. So,
too. Yeah.
That's part of the deal too. So if you get a little bit less, it's not a big deal because that as like a depreciation of what you gave or amortizing whatever the cost. I mean, if you want to play Moneyball, but go ahead, John.
No, I was going to say similar to how I said to give an extra pick or something to move Brasses up to a third. A lot of things I've been reading have said they could get a third for Braun. Well, this year's draft, I don't agree with everybody that says it's not as very strong. I think it's just that's GMs being lazy because of the COVID year, and they want to direct the narrative that way. So if they screw up, they don't look like complete idiots. That's more how I see that. But when it comes to the picks this year, once you get to the 4th, 5th, 6th round, it isn't as sexy as next year's draft. It's like deep as hell. So if you had to trade a say 5th or 4th for this year's draft with Braun to get the second back for next year's, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to doing that at all, because this year's draft after the 3rd round does get a little bit spotty, where next year's is even pretty damn good in the later rounds as well. Just on paper. Obviously, guys turn out well, like the Connor Garlands of the world, but on paper, it looks really good in the later rounds as well next year.
All right, let's get into general trade deadline talk, and then we'll end with talking about the draft a little bit. And Isaiah, we're going to go a little bit longer. So if you, again, I know.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jess, I gotta get rolling.
Hey, no worries.
No worries.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Really do.
It was fun.
Thank you for joining. Yeah, really appreciate
it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, dude, you were awesome.
Thanks for hopping on, Isaiah. It was awesome to meet you, too. This is the first time I got to talk to you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Take it easy.
Thanks, Isaiah.
Okay.
Talk to you, buddy.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. All right, so let's get in a little bit of trade deadline talk. Oh man, so these are just some of the names we have listed.
We're not gonna go like in depth.
No, we can just talk in general, and then we'll wrap up. I just want to hear who you guys want with the Flyers' top pick. But so we'll do just this general. So name some of the. So obviously Manson is off the board. Tyson Yost is off the board as well. They were both traded. We mentioned that earlier today. Ben Sherratt, his name is still out there. Again, we're talking about Justin Braun. They want a first round pick for Sherratt. Ben. I think Justin Braun's value is higher than Sherratt.
In terms of gameplay, I would say the same for Sherratt too. That's a
cost.
Good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing to look at the Flyers or for the Flyers though. If Montreal trades him, let's say relatively the next couple of days, like before the deadline, it only brings Braun's value up because teams that didn't have a chance to get it on Sherratt now will have to look for a different alternative. So the Flyers should be hoping that he goes as quick as possible for Montreal, I would say.
Yeah, I don't even know if they can be able to move him considering what they were asking for.
Yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't pay a first for him if I was.
No, dude, not even. He's a third pairing defenseman.
Especially when you could get Braun.
The only team that's paying a first for Sherratt is if it's like how the Lightning gave a first for Goudreau. We know Barclay Goudreau's not a first round pick player, but
just for that team,
exactly for that team, they needed that.
I want to say something about. I want to deviate real quick off Ristolainen, and I think people are a little too harsh. Like I know Isaiah was calling him a third pairing defenseman. I don't think he's a third pairing defenseman. I think he's a top 4 defenseman, and I think
second pairing guy for me.
He's a second pairing guy. I don't think he's a top. I'm sorry. Did I say top pairing? I said top pairing.
No, top 4.
Top 4. Yes.
Top 4,
sorry.
yeah,
not as top pairing. And again, he is exactly what I thought he was. A number 4 on a team. If they're a good team, he excels. If they're not a good team, he will get exposed, just like other players that can't carry a team. But the one thing I will say, like Barclay Goudreau, Blake Coleman, these guys are good players. They all get overpaid because they're physical players. Like they literally buy the money wise. And yes, they won a championship and that definitely adds to that. But like they're overpaid.
You're paying for physicality in this league because there isn't very much of it. So.
And that the same thing is happening with Risto.
I also think that's why the Avalanche, not to tangent on this too much, but gave up Yost for Sturm because Sturm plays a more physical run through you.
And he's a bit better. He's a bit better defensively. So that's like playoffs. That's playoffs in mind too, I'd say.
Well, Yost actually is graded pretty good defensively. It's just Colorado, even strength defense. It's just Colorado, for some reason, refuses to put him on the peak. So you never really got to see.
I have a feeling that Minnesota is going to win that trade, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Yost is going to play up in that lineup in Minnesota.
He might go with Goudreau. Because Frederick Goudreau, who's a more defensive guy, has been on the second line. They might flip him back down to the 4th.
I mean,
put him up on the second, and then have DeWar be the depth center, basically, and then just do it that way.
They're still young guys, both of them, but I could literally see like that change. Because Yost was never supposed to be a 4th line player.
No, but he has more offensive ability than a Sturm would, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah, offensive upside. I would say offensive upside.
By the way, Nolan Patrick has been activated off of IR. I saw that on Cap Friendly.
Nice.
Just wanted to bring that up, and God bless that kid's soul. I hope he fucking makes it through. But I don't know anybody who's had this many injuries, dude.
Lots of concussions for him.
His career is like definitely in jeopardy. We're talking about like.
Well, I could see him out in the next couple of years if he doesn't get like a full season under his belt.
We're talking about like Brett Lindros type of shit, like where you come into the league and you just can't stop getting injured. It's crazy.
And it sucks because he was getting going for that week there before he got injured again with Vegas, and then he went down again.
He is an unlucky kid. I mean, I don't even know what to say. So let's talk about some other players. So Chikrin is up.
He's injured now, though.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like
I still am confused why they are trading him.
Well, they just don't want, like, they just can't. Apparently they just, want to gain the assets for a future time. But he's still very young.
So young.
I don't know either.
It's like, you got it. This is my point about the Provorov and it's like, yeah, get rid of all the other guys, keep the young guys, and like build to get, like, they need to be the same age.
But who knows too? Like, behind the scenes in Arizona, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy who's like, get me out of here.
Well, I know he, after what's his name was traded. Who was traded from? Arizona recently? That was good.
Like Domi. That was a while back, though.
Are we talking about this year or like
this year? They traded Connor Garland. Who did they trade?
Garland.
Garland.
Strom.
And what's his name?
Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Yeah, and I remember he tweeted out like an unhappy face.
Yeah.
After that happened, because like, dude, probably everybody he was like building a team with is like moved on. Gone. Yeah, he's got to carry the team. They're at the bottom of the league. Though fucking Shane Goss's Bears in there. Get it together. I miss
deflating.
Dude, you guys see how harsh people. This was my point. People are so harsh on Ghost, and they're like, "That's the reason our defense sucks." No.
Well, they're just he's still, as Isaiah was saying before, he's still not a good defensive player. But at least they're not expecting him to be that there. They're expecting him to be offensive, right?
Look, he is not an elite defensive guy. But if I'm going to go to his numbers right now. And again, everybody keeps saying, "Oh,
37 in 59 games."
Yeah,
he's not bad offensively. Like, he's very, very talented.
But again, he's a -5 on this team.
Yeah, on Arizona, who's terrible. So
who's terrible when Yandel was a -33.
The last 3 nights, 24.5 minutes. The night before that, 24.5 minutes. The guy's playing between 20 and 24 minutes a night. Like, on a bad team. And I remember when Yandel was here, immediately everybody's like, oh, Yandel is everything that Ghost is. I think people were so fucking hard on Ghost. And I think Fletcher fell for that shit. And then you lost another trade. And I was disgusted by that trade when I saw it. Yeah. I was like, what do you mean you traded a second and a seventh to get rid of a guy who makes $4.5 million a year?
They didn't want to trade him. They didn't want to trade. No. I mean, I don't mean like they didn't want to trade him. I don't mean they didn't want to trade him. I'm saying they didn't want to trade him and give up assets.
But they did. But they did.
But they did do it because they tried to get rid of him on waivers, but they couldn't. Right?
Why? So why? But he led your defense in points.
It goes back to what we said earlier, though. Arizona's put him, and I've said this
in
before,
a position to succeed.
So they get rid of the fucking
I've ever been of the Coyotes. Yeah, this is the most complimentary I've ever been of the Coyotes organization. But they put their defensemen in positions to succeed. Like I said, with Mayo, Moser, Kovabianco this year, they've done the same with Ghost. How can
that guy Mayo is the same age as Provorov? I just want to say that.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Like, how can you? Yeah, I agree with you on that point. But like, how can you have a team like Arizona, who's universally regarded as the NHL shit show, put guys into the right positions because you have? And Torney, I think, is a brilliant mind. I think he's going to have success down there. If they do the Jeff Blashill treatment with him, I think that will be the right move for Arizona because Torney seems to have the right mindset and system. Now it's just about giving him the damn people to actually have a good team in Arizona.
No, I think what you're saying is really smart. But this is what's concerning me is like I get why this is not a knock on Flyers fans. Like, this year has been shit. Last year was shit. I don't blame everybody for trying to turn every.
Can't be down on every player, really.
But my point is like we are a team. We are right now a team that we made fun of years ago, like the Buffalo Sabres, and where players come here and their talent dies. Like Taylor Hall, his talent dying in Buffalo. Like, what the hell is Taylor Hall putting up 4 goals for your team? What the hell does it matter with you? We're doing that to players now. So that's what my point is. Like, you guys can get mad at the individual players. You can hate on Jake Voracek. You can hate on Ghost. The fact is that guys are coming here and their careers are getting worse. That is the problem to me. And I'm like, until that is resolved, you can pick on Provorov, because last year everybody hated Sanheim. Now Sanheim is a good partner. Remember, he couldn't skate last year because he fell a few times. People are doing that to Provorov now because he's having a stretch.
Well, this year, I still know people that complain about Sanheim just because of the few, like, he still will make those slides off his stick. The play he went behind the net when he shouldn't have went behind the net. Like those
players perfect though, right? Like,
nobody's perfect. Those things happen. this is the first year I think the Flyers have actually, well, Mike Yeo, not the Flyers. The one good thing Mike Yeo has done is let Sanheim be Sanheim, I think, and then let Risto be more Risto.
I think the complimentary Risto worked exactly the way we wanted to. Like Sanheim is not a physical player at all. Risto is very
gives
physical.
him a bit of peace of mind in a sense.
I think the complimentary works just like when the season started, and nobody can lie to me about this. When Provorov and Ellis were playing together, even that short sample size, they were dominant together. They were it literally. I haven't seen a pairing play that strongly for a Flyers team in a while. That is a humongous loss to us. And I get that people want more out of Provorov, completely justifiable. I am not giving up on a guy who's
you gotta, like I said, you gotta give the guy. You gotta.
He was 24 when the year started.
Yeah, it's just bad asset management if you're going to trade him now because his value's the lowest it's been, right? So you got to give him a chance to rebound at least, and then from there you evaluate.
Yes, and I'm kind of sick of it. I'm sick of our team being the ones that are fucking shit up with players. Like, there's something wrong with us then. Like, the company I work for now, we are in the 0.003% of companies, the startup company I work for. Apparently, our annual, our ARR, right, the amount of revenue that we're making over year after year is something that less than 1% of companies have ever achieved. There's like 1,000 companies that have done it. It's a ridiculous growth rate, okay? Like something stupid. Like we're gonna make a ridiculous amount of money as a company. My entire company are the most aggressive, confident people that I met, and that energy just spans to everybody, right? Like it's literally top down.
The Flyers seem to be the opposite of that.
That's what I'm saying. Is like right now, that's our energy. We're like, if you put a good employee into our company, he's not going to work as well. He's gonna be demoralized. He's going to be frustrated with the system around him. That is what I'm watching, and that needs to be fixed first before you give up on Provorov. Otherwise, you don't have a choice. You got to tear it down, but you got to get rid of Fletcher too. You got to get rid of it. Then you really.
It's just going to happen to every single young guy you bring in. That is your
fire sale, but there's no guarantee that'll work either because you could destroy things even worse. Sorry, I'm bitching and moaning.
No, that's okay.
We keep going in circles because it's like I think we all feel the same way. So hold on, let's get into some of the other trade deadline guys before I go off for like 20 fucking minutes. So Giordano is still out there. JT Miller, his name has been thrown around. I don't
know if they're going to trade him. I think it might be next year because he'll have 1 year. It'll be a UFA going into the 2024.
I think they're going to trade Brock Besser for a cheaper RFA.
Yeah,
he's an RFA.
He's an RFA, yeah. I saw rumors out there, like Elliot Friedman was saying on 32 Thoughts, things like that, Besser was of interest to the Penguins, and the Penguins are looking at like a John Marino type.
I saw Garland. I heard today that Connor Garland is top of Penguins list because he's signed.
Yeah, Garland. Okay, Garland too. I saw that as well. Yeah, so who knows? But Besser's name's been out there for sure. Giordano one's interesting. I don't know if you all remember, Alexei Zhitnik for Braden Coburn.
Of course, I brought it up on the podcast the other day.
Yeah. So that trade, I think for Seattle, that's a similar return. Maybe they could get for Giordano, but he's better than Zhitnik was at that point.
Still, Giordano is potential. I don't want to say Hall of Famer. But he's
he could. He's
a great defenseman.
That's what I mean.
Like if I was a playoff team, I would try to get him. I think Toronto would be looking at him. I think he has a relatively high cap hit, which is.
But that's what I mean. I can see like a Giordano for like a good prospect. Maybe, instead of like a pick, something like that.
Well, dude, I look at what Josh Manson, who I think is a good defenseman, but he's no Claude Giroux. If they can get a second in Helleson for Manson.
Which that's 2 seconds, basically, if you want to look at it from that, because Helleson was a second round pick. Yeah. So, that's technically 2 second-round picks.
Dude, I want fucking Newhook. Like that. Like, I would be playing hardball, but then again, I wouldn't have waited till game 1,000. Like, I get that it looks good and all that, but
I think a lot of it comes back to the cap purposes. Like Florida's strapped, so is the Avalanche. So is a lot of the teams, so they have to wait till the last moment to accrue the daily space.
That's actually good. That's a very good point.
And pay less of the contract.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. And again, even with 50% retained, Giroux's cap hit's still 4.1.
Yeah, exactly. So still bigger than a lot of the other guys on the list. So they're probably waiting for that for him. But either way, now
we have to remember though, we already paid half of it. Well, more than half of his year total.
Exactly.
So even if you eat it, it'll be half of what that technically
is.
Yeah,
it'll be like a 2 point.
That's a good point. I wonder what that would be. Another guy that I think is very interesting, and I do think there's a chance he gets moved at this trade deadline, but maybe it's even an off season. Alexander Georgiev.
Yeah, I could see that as well.
Hard to say.
That's another one maybe the Leafs will look to, or like another team that's looking for goalies.
I was actually thinking about, I was like, if they really want to fix their goaltender situation, I know he's had some ups and downs, but I legitimately think he is a very talented goaltender.
I do too.
More than Mrazek, and he's more consistent. And it's like,
he's just stuck behind Shesterkin now, so there's nothing you can really do.
Right. And maybe he's not going to be a Shesterkin. Most guys are not, right? I think Carter Hart could be if he's in the fucking right team. But, Georgiev could be a guy who's like,
dependable.
Like a number one, like maybe Edmonton takes a look at Georgiev. Like, this is a guy who has the skill. I don't know if he has the consistency, but he has the skill to be a number one goalie.
If you put it behind a decent team, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like a team that's solid defensively.
And he's very athletic in his game. Like, you'll see him make some huge saves that you're like, okay, I never thought, you could see a goaltender make a save like that. So he's got the talent. It's just more about getting the game reps. Like, when you're playing as a backup, I mean, you're not getting that time to really show off, your skill, because you're not really playing every game. You're in like one every 5 or 6, 7 games. It's just Shesterkin's so good. They just roll him out there.
Yeah.
On a regular for the Rangers.
I think he's an interesting guy to pick up, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's moved here at the trade deadline. And if I'm a good team, and my question is goaltending, all I have to do is point back to that Philadelphia Flyers goaltender tandem where they went in with Boucher and
as to why you should get a better goalie.
Yeah, because that's why we lost those playoff series.
Pretty much. That's why you lost the cup.
You don't want to be like, oh, I didn't want to move a second round pick, But if you're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, like legitimate.
Yeah.
Like if you have the team to go deep, like St. Louis, I don't really think they need anything, but maybe they need a defenseman. But
maybe Braun could be interesting for them too. No.
But if goaltender is the tricky one, because you only got 2 of them that legitimately can play. Usually defensemen, you got a rotation of guys, you got young guys in the minors that can step in. But like goaltending is really tough. So like you go out and you get the best goaltender you can. And maybe New York doesn't want to move him, but I don't think New York is going to be buyers at the trade deadline. I think that they're one more year. I think they'll give it time. Joe, did you want to say
New
something?
New York has a backup goalie. He got shelled in his first game. He was against one of the best teams in the league. So throw that out on the wayside for Huska. Like, he's a NHL level backup, and Shesterkin's going to be basically Vasili. Like, I don't see them sitting in. He's going to play 60 to 65 a year. Most
and they
likely.
Still even have Kincaid there too in the minor.
Good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that. They do have Kincaid on the minor league team too.
It's crazy.
So they have a veteran, and then they have Huska, who's been great for the Wolfpack throughout the whole season. So I think they're fine in net. Your team, you hit it on the head. Edmonton's the perfect team for him because Toronto's a good team for this year, but I think Toronto's bought in on Campbell if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, for sure.
Georgiev, I think, would just be there this year and then have to go elsewhere anyway. Where if he goes to Edmonton, I think he can find himself a home and a place to kind of settle down and be in for a bit, because if he starts hitting fire there, they have no reason not to keep him around.
Yeah. I think Edmonton is definitely... It could be a team to look at him. I heard Justin Braun in Edmonton as well, but I don't know.
Braun could go.
Perfect.
Braun could really. I mean, if you look at all 16 teams, he could be a fit on all of them.
Anyone,
on all the playoff teams.
Yeah.
No, seriously. There's not a single team that doesn't want his. That's where I was like, we could actually get a second round pick for him because every team would want this guy. And you look at what Manson is, and he's more expensive. You know what I mean? Braun is like literally a guy, exactly what you're going to get from him. What you're going to get. You can play him anywhere.
He's durable. He's durable. He hasn't missed a ton of games in the last few seasons at all.
And that's why I was thinking Maple Leafs, just because they've been so desperate for right side physical defensemen.
Side guys,
where they even putting Lyubushkin in the lineup. And he's not very good. And he's younger, so I'm sure he can get, but he's not Justin Braun. But the problem is we're probably asking for a second, and I don't know how.
Bushkin's what Branson was like 4 years ago while he was still trying.
He's very tough and physical.
Yeah. But Braun is extremely consistent and reliable.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason he's lasted here so long. I could even see Fletcher being like, "Oh, I don't know if I should move. Fucking move him. Stop holding it." Like even and again, Risto is relatively young, and I think that's kind of forgotten here is that he's only 27 years old. Like he's not an old man or anything.
Not the end of his career either.
Yeah, he's got.
Whereas Braun looks like, I mean, this could be the end for him.
What are you holding him so you could be one of the bottom teams in the league? Fucking get rid of him. Like anybody who is at the there are so many guys on this team that like really don't need to be here while we struggle. And like JVR is one of them. And you could even make a case Giroux is one of them, but he's just an icon.
And maybe that's something else. That's something else we didn't really talk about too, but maybe JVR is the guy that you see surprisingly moved at the deadline. That could be more of a summer deal, but like I know Arizona's looking to gain salary cap.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was just about to say, like, how the hell is Arizona going to attract NHL talent? But like JVR isn't going anywhere. He doesn't have a trade. He doesn't have a trade. No trade clause. He makes $5 million instead of $7 million against the cap. It's cheaper for us to eat a portion of his salary than it is for us to buy him out. So like maybe we retain 25%, trade JVR for nothing.
Yeah, I would. Why not? I mean, you could use the cap space. It's not like he's really making your team any better.
They're losing Phil Kessel. I mean, he's still on pace for like 17 goals this year.
JVR, yeah, he's not like
fucking crazy because he's played so bad.
Which I also think they might do that too, just because they need money. They have, I think, 8 guys on their cap hit for next year.
They need to meet the cap floor. They have
and who's going to want to play there?
Yeah, and JVR, even if you trade him, you might be able to, if you want a veteran in that might buy into Philly's rebuild, because he's already won, obviously. Kessel might be a decent veteran to bring in because he's that funny, always keeps the room light goofball that still plays well. And then they're getting a guy that's contract expires. The Flyers can re-sign him for 3 something, whatever the hell they signed him for. And then the Coyotes are getting someone that helps them hit the cap floor. Lance brought that up on his show a couple months ago.
I just think they can get actual value. The only problem is I think Phil Kessel will net them a nice return. You know? Like I think
they might be able to get decent value.
Yeah. Like he's still putting up numbers. Like I don't think it's the same thing as like if JVR was on the last year if JVR was on the last year of his contract, I think he also would be tradable at 50%.
That's interesting to me that we haven't really heard. Like that's one guy's name. I haven't heard Kessel get thrown out there, but he is a UFA. I'm surprised that there hasn't been more.
I've heard a little bit of it. It is a little weird, but I heard.
I could see the Kings. I could see the Kings getting him because they have a lot of young guns with the Browns and Kopitors of the world getting a veteran.
I heard a little bit today that he said he wants to go to a playoff team. Like that he's told Arizona that.
Imagine Kessel back in Boston after all this time.
Apparently Boston's good in Giroux.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I mean, think about it. Their second line center position now that Krejci left is huge hole. So that would fill it for them.
Dude, every time I think about the Flyers, I think about the Bruins, and I go like, and again, we know the perfection line or whatever, but that is a team that went through so many changes.
And it still
didn't get more talented and didn't miss a fucking beat. And that's why I can't stop thinking about the Flyers. No matter how many people pick on Provorov or Sanheim or any of this shit, I'm like, there's something fucking wrong here.
Culturally, yeah.
Yes. I do.
Yeah, they're like the little.
Sorry, go ahead.
The Flyers are like the team you would go to if you played on like high school travel, where you had one team you played on that was great. And then the second team you were playing for was one of the worst teams in the league. So you had barely any motivation going to your second team.
It breaks my heart, dude, because we were never this team when I watched them growing up.
Yeah.
And things have gotten to the point, they've disintegrated so much where talent comes here to die.
Which is the opposite of what you want if you're going to try to, remake a team quickly.
That's also why I think they overpaid Risto, because he talked about, I love the city. I bought into the city. I love everything about Philly. I love everything about the fan. You kind of need the heart and soul guys when your culture sucks.
Yeah.
That have all that with them. I think that's part of why he got paid.
It's a lot of the guys really like him in the room too. So question for everybody, who do we think is making the biggest splash at the deadline? Personally, me, I'm going to make it a, simple answer. I'd say whatever team gets Giroux, that'll be the biggest splash. So
yeah, I agree.
How about you, Joe?
For me, I think a team that's already started to do it is Colorado, and for all reports, they said Sakic ain't done. So from hearing he already got Manson, he flipped for cap reasons and also playoffs out.
And then you get Giroux there too somehow. Then
and then if you got Giroux there somehow, or Patrick Kane, then your team's even more.
I think the Patrick Kane thing is literally impossible.
I think they might think about it in the offseason. It's just more of an offseason thing, maybe.
It's just I don't know how they would do that. Money. It makes so much money. And
it'd have to be off season to move things around.
Like why wouldn't you re-sign Nazem Kadri at $8 million a year?
It'd be interesting though.
I guess I'd rather have Patrick Kane.
I'd rather have Kane. Imagine Kane and McKinnon together.
Maybe that's the thought. Maybe that's literally their thought is like if we can get Kane on here with McKinnon. But they have Rantanen. They have
then put Rantanen in. Then put Rantanen on the same line.
The one thing I wanted to say,
they're even trading Kadri because Newhook's a center, so they might be saying if you're retooling,
but not now. You're not going to be.
Well. I mean,
before the playoffs, he's been killing it.
Center now, but like
that's an offseason
I'm just
move.
Saying, if you're getting Kane,
he's a UFA anyway.
He's a UFA.
You're going to have to give up somebody. Kane's not a UFA. Kadri is. That might work in terms of you not having to give up as much assets otherwise, and it works better money-wise, too.
They got to move Bowen Byram to get Kane, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree with that.
I want Alex Newhook so bad for Giroux. Like, that's exactly what we goddamn need. That's what we need. If you really want to change the goddamn tone of what is happening, Fletcher, that's the move to make. And, it, obviously it doesn't have to be Newhook, but if you can get a legitimate prospect.
Yeah.
Even if you got to throw in a fucking pick or something and get a guy who's guaranteed, somewhat developed, can come in, play in your top six, and slowly develop into be a point per game player, you can change the tone. And then we'll get into the draft here at the end. But you add that plus this top 5 pick, that you can change the entire tone of the fan base in a couple months, and then hire the right fucking coach. Like seriously, like legitimately another coach that can turn this fucking team around, which I think is possible. We see it all the time. Then you can change this. And just to the whole Risto overpaid thing, like Josh Manson is older than Risto, right? He is right-handed. He's a little smaller than Risto. He's never had the same numbers that Ristolainen has.
I say he's a little more physical, though.
I think Manson's better in the defensive zone than Risto. Though.
Yeah.
Okay, so he makes 4.1 million a year. Again, not an offensive. I guess he has one season where he was offensively productive, plus 34 too in that year, which is awesome. 7 goals, 30 assists. I mean, he has like. What does he put up? I don't know. He puts up like 20 points a year.
He's going to get a similar deal at UFA.
That's my point. He's probably getting $5.5 million a year.
Probably around there.
So
like that.
I don't necessarily think that Risto is overpaid. I think he's overpaid for our situation.
Yeah.
Because I actually think Josh Manson.
Well, that's what I was speaking about. Like, if you're paying as like any second pairing defenseman in this league at this point is going to be between probably like 4.5 to like 5.5, maybe 6 if they're really good. So like if you look at Travis Sanheim, he was making what, like a 4.7? That's around the right range for a second pair guy. The argument obviously is Risto a second pair guy? I personally think he's a number 4. Some people don't think that's where the argument comes in terms of the overpayment. But if you're looking at what a second pairing defenseman should be paid, like his cap hits right on brand with that.
I mean, it's
his cap hits right on brand with the structure of how people pay, and that's how I always get into arguments with Steve with based off the market, which I agree with that. It's more would I have paid him $5 million?
That's a different. Yeah,
I would.
Exactly.
I would, and I think Manson fits more. Like you were saying, he's not as physical, but the Flyers need. We talked about this when Isaiah was on that guy that's just good in the defensive zone. Manson's more like a better version at times when he has a good year of Adam Larson. So if the Flyers kind of need a player of that style more than
I wanted Larson instead of Risto.
Need the physical.
Well, that's where you can make the case that Risto's like $600,000 a year overpaid.
Yeah, which I can agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
In a prime UFA year, but I do understand why people are upset that we re-signed him. Like I do get that.
Yeah,
I love him as a player. It's just the style he plays is like good for our team, but it's not like you said, the primary thing we need. We're on defense. They just need that shutdown guy that can mix in with everybody else.
Honestly, I think he is. And I think these players are better than they're performing. I don't like even Danny Briere, who's, by the way, is a big fan of Ristolainen. I heard people saying that, like, oh, they're not listening. Briere was the first one to go, like, I hated play. Like, get this guy. We hate playing against guys like this. Like, he was all for Risto.
Yeah, I did hear that aware. As well. I did hear that
just so everyone is aware that listens to this, that is not true. And that is a skilled guy who's obviously being honest. We all like Briere right now. This is not like, I think the problem is, like what I was saying, like, look at Ivan Provorov and the way people are talking. I never even imagined this would happen. Ivan Provorov, do you guys remember that goal where he cut through the D and went around the team top? Like, this is a guy who put 17 even strength goals during a season. This is a guy who was one of the best young defensemen in the NHL. You wouldn't have even dreamed about trading him. There's something wrong here. All of a sudden I'm hearing he's a locker room problem. Ghost a locker room problem. Voracek is a locker. No. We're fucking toxic. And I'm not saying this city, I have nothing against Philly. This is my home, but something here is toxic. We're bringing people down.
There's something wrong. Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I'm not saying I know what it is, but something is wrong. When you start scapegoating and going, oh, it's this guy. It's this guy. Yeah, but they gave you great years.
But when he was playing with AMAC, it begs the question: is it a waste of time to keep Fletcher around if it's such an organizational thing? Are you just delaying the inevitable? You know what I mean?
It's hard for me to tell if Fletcher is a good GM or not at this point.
I think this offseason for me is going to be a big believer. To be honest, though,
same.
No matter what he does, or it's going to be a big like indicator, at least this offseason, of what he does will show like kind of what kind of GM he is for me. I just think no matter what happens, if the team starts out bad next year, he's gone halfway through anyway.
Look,
so
people weren't happy when all he did was grab Niskanen, who nobody was happy about when that trade happened, which was baffling to me. I fucking loved that trade so much. And I was a big Matt Niskanen fan before that. He went out and grabbed Niskanen, Hayes, Braun, AV, and this team completely changed. Whatever happened in that time to change the tone of the room.
He has to somehow do that again. Yeah. Recreate that.
Again, if Ellis was here and Couturier was here, we're not hitting rock bottom. Not like this.
No.
We probably still wouldn't be very good. We'd still be a bubble. You'd be close.
Columbus. You'd be close to the bubble. Like
we'd be like Columbus or Detroit. You know what I mean? We'd be on the bubble. And I don't think everybody would be freaking out as bad. But at the same time, like we're still, to Isaiah's point, I think he brings up a great fucking point. We don't want to just string into the goddamn playoffs.
You want to win and build winning teams perennially, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying this might actually end up being lucky. Just don't panic. Don't trade Provorov and blame him and blame. Look what happened when you panicked with Ghost. And you panicked and you went out and got Risto. Stop making these fucking moves. Be smart. That's the one thing that I think Hextall doesn't get enough credit for. And I agree with the criticisms on him too, but the guy didn't lose a trade.
Well, he had a vision though of what he was trying to do in the first place, which
he did not lose.
You could argue, I don't know if there's any vision here from what we're seeing.
And I agree. I don't see one either. But Hextall never lost.
Hextall had a vision. I do think he had a part in wrecking the culture though.
But I think that's very fair.
And I think he didn't execute the vision in a right way.
I think Isaiah's point that when you're mediocre for it's just like tanking for a very long period of time.
It becomes acceptable to be shit. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only thing that was holding us above all of that during Hextall's time was like literally Simmons, Giroux, and Voracek.
And then as they start to age, you see it.
They were excellent. Yeah. And I guess you can add Couturier in there because he emerged under that time. Like there was our excellence of the team, and then everybody else was carried by them.
Yeah, I would agree.
Andrew McDonald was a top pairing defender. You think as soon as Fletcher took over, he got bought out.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? You know what I mean?
The other side was like, why? It
wasn't even necessary to buy him out, in my opinion. You just play him in the bottom pairing. You could have just played him as a bottom pairing defenseman, but
there's more cap savings, I think. So what do we think for the draft?
Let's talk about the draft. Thank you for going so long. I wanted to make sure this one went long because it's episode 100, but
no worries.
We've done almost 2.5 hours, so it's
I think we're good to go.
Yeah, talking about hockey, I could do 6 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Joe, you don't even look a little bit tired, but I do have to edit the episode and get it up tonight. Yeah, let's talk about the draft. So let's go. Who's your top choice, and then who are your two secondary? Like,
well,
options
me and you are probably in step on this.
Well, let's see. I'm interested.
Top choice, I'm taking.
Let's assume we're picking at 3. Okay, let's just say that. So we don't have the top 2 picks. Let's assume we're picking at 3 because it's where we're projecting at the moment.
I would go Cooley if he's there at 3. And then if you can't get Cooley because he's off the board, I will go Yariv and Savoy as the next 2 options.
Okay, Joe.
I really like that. I just think from what I saw from him in the Olympics, Slavkovsky would be my first guy just because
he looked nasty.
He wasn't afraid of anybody. He didn't care if you were 6'8", and he was going to shoot it around you and find a way to get around you. And then Cooley, those guys are kind of tied for me, though. I don't even want to say one's a first or a second. It's kind of like if you draft one of those 2 guys,
you're in a good shape.
Going to be pleasantly happy. Yeah. And then Savoy's right in the 4 spot for me, but someone just in terms of how I really like his shot and how I think he can become that sniper we need while being good on both ends. I do really like Joakim Kemmel from Finland because he's a sniper that is not just going to be like Caulfield and Kessel, great in the offensive zone, but then lax on the other end. He actually has the other end play at a good level as well.
A little reminiscent of, he probably shooting more, but it kind of reminds me of Aho a little bit, but less. Obviously.
That's a good point. Yeah, he's good at both ends.
Yeah.
So, I love everything you guys are saying. Kemmel's 15 goals in 37 games in Liga. That's pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive.
For a dude that age. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, honestly, those are my 3. And maybe Nemec is in there. I believe he's but I guess there's Juracek too. Yeah. I would be open to drafting a defenseman. But I think that's a miss.
I think if there's a top center available, you have to go center, just based off what the team kind of needs. You shouldn't obviously go need. You should go best player available.
Dude,
but
I'm still in the mindset that if we have the first overall pick, I'm taking Logan Cooley. And people might not agree with me, but I am so high on the U.S. development program that I don't want to miss out on the best player in that program.
I can see that. Yeah.
I just see it as a surefire. Maybe he's not the best player in the draft, but it's a surefire all-star player in my mind. I don't know.
That program hasn't missed in a while.
Exactly.
So they've been developing a really good player.
There's no miss with Cooley. He literally, to me, seems like another Claude Giroux. In my mind, I'm like, that's what I want. If we're not getting a new hook, I desperately want to see a playmaking, elite play driving center in the system.
Yeah.
Savoy is my number 2 behind that. And Kimmel or Slavkovsky. Wow, I had trouble saying that. Definitely interested in either one of those guys. I don't know all of the talent beyond that well, but the place where we're drafting right now, I feel like we're getting one of those guys.
And then if somehow, sorry, Joe, I was just gonna say if somehow you get Shane Wright, I don't think any of us would be pretty mad at that.
I would not be upset with Shane Wright. I wouldn't be upset if the Flyers had the first overall pick and picked Shane Wright.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, my whole thing with Shane Wright is are we getting a Jordan Stahl? I don't want Jordan Stahl.
Yeah, or you're getting Sean Couturier number 2.
More. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Jordan Stahl. We just need something more than that.
We need more dynamic offense, I would say.
Exactly. I need a playmaking, dynamic player.
Ideally, what I would say is the Flyers need to aim to get their Matthew Barzal. That's what I would think.
Yes.
He's not, the most top-tier offensive guy, but he's going to get you 80, 90 points at least, right? So.
Yes. And that's exactly what I look at. And again, with guys like Juracek and Nemec available as well, even if we draft at 5, somebody's taking a defenseman. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
One of the teams up there is going to be we want a D-man. There's some good D-men available. They're playing against men. That always counts.
They would be good picks as well.
Yeah, and obviously we saw Logan Cooley's dropping a little bit in the rankings, so it's the fact that I saw him at 4, I'm like.
And who knows what you could do? Let's say you're the Flyers and let's say you're picking 3rd and there's a team picking 4th and the team picking 3rd wants somebody else and you can drop and get Cooley at 4 and get another asset. That's
potentially.
You never know.
I honestly, I wouldn't even risk it. I would grab Cooley. If Savoy is the other guy, I'm happy. but I have a weird feeling that we're drafting Logan Cooley. I've been talking about it over and over again.
I know you have.
And the stars just seem to be aligning. And dude, I was thinking about it. I was like, what if he's available and the Flyers pass him to draft somebody else? I'm going to be like,
the next episode of the podcast, you're going to be like heartbroken, man.
Yeah, well, imagine how the fan base is going to be.
Yeah, not good.
Unless if you draft, you would have to have the 3 people we mentioned on the board.
Sure.
And then if they draft one of them otherwise, then people would still probably be fine with it. It's just if you fall and drop and go, well, we're going to draft Lekarmaki at 3. I really like Lekarmaki, but people are going to be like, well, you drafted him at 3?
Yeah.
That's going to be the first reaction there. And you have to hope you turn into Kakalainen and actually have somebody that people didn't even know who the hell they were. And you see these draft analysts when Chinakhov gets picked up.
So
trying to figure out who he is.
If we look at, if we look at Tankathon, they have Shane Wright at 1, Logan Cooley at 2, Matthew Savoy at 3, Yura Slavkovsky. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble saying his name. At 4, maybe he's another Rantanen, so that'd be dope. Simon Nemec at 5, Joachim Kimmel at 6, Brad Lambert, which I'm surprised didn't drop more, at 7, and then Yurov at 8. Juracek at 9, Frank. So if we look at that list, like I'm sure you probably don't agree with all of that, Joe, just judging by the stuff you're saying, there's like nuance there. I think all these lists are wrong. So if you're in that top 4, I don't see how we don't end up with one of the best forwards in this draft.
And it's looking more and more like they're going to be in the top 4, top 5, like just based on how it's going at this point.
I think there's a good chance that Arizona will look for a defenseman to draft.
Yeah, I could see it, especially if you're trying to trade Chychrun as well.
Yeah, and if the lottery goes a different route, right? Oh, I just ran the lottery and the Flyers got the first overall pick.
There you go.
And then Arizona got the second pick. Yeah, but anyway, I think it's gonna be really interesting, and I think these rankings will probably change by the time we get to finals, but probably slightly. Not too much,
it always shifts around a little bit closer to the draft.
We'll see. It doesn't look like the Flyers will have another first round pick this year.
I feel like CHL playoffs usually have a bit of a factor in how stuff kind of changes a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, one guy that's moved up a lot, we talked about for whatever reason, Cooley's moved down a little bit, and then Lambert, for the reasons of not looking as sharp as before, has moved down.
Not producing.
When it comes to Urov, Danila Urov at the beginning of the season, I remember I did a video on
he moved up quite significantly.
Yeah, this guy's pretty solid, but like I wouldn't draft him with our pick if it was a high pick or something like that. Where now I don't want to be our first choice, but like if we picked him, I wouldn't really look at it like sideways at the 4th or 5th pick.
Is it because he has no points in the KHL this year?
I think the MHL he dominated, where the KHL
36 points in 23 games.
Yeah, he hasn't produced the points yet, but from reading a bunch of stuff, since I follow a couple channels that talk about the KHL in English, since I don't speak Russian, they talk about how he has really played well within those games. It's just the point share hasn't come yet at the KHL level, but he's looked fine on the ice and played his game sharp, and it's just about growing into the strength and body and all that stuff you hear with every prospect. But in terms of a shooter and sniper, he has good goal scoring ability with probably a little bit more passing ability than some of the guys that are just the straight snipers of this draft that are really good in front of the net, like say the McGrody's or something like that. He can also kind of dish the puck a little bit as well.
Yeah. It's a shame that the Flyers don't have a second round pick this year. Hopefully they can get one next year because
they're going to have to try to recoup, I think, for next year.
We don't really talk about the Flyers prospects at all right now. Like, I noticed that, like, Tuamala, nobody talks about him.
Yeah. I mean, we try to touch on them a bit in our podcast, but a lot of other...
But I noticed, like, the thought right now with the Flyers is that our system is, like, empty.
Terrible. But there's a lot of decent prospects.
It's just not true.
There's nobody that's, like, the high-end guy.
Well, and that's what I was saying. If we had a new hook and a Cooley... Doesn't all that conversation disappear overnight?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, they have Cooley. They They have Newhook. They have Bobby Brink. They have what's his name?
Tuamala. They have
Emil Andre. Right? It's like
Wisdom.
Yeah.
Ronnie Attard, Ethan Sampson interviewed his dad.
Ethan Sampson
Attard looks good, and Sampson's ripping it up.
Ronnie Attard is one of the highest scoring.
I swear he almost got first. He was almost another unanimous first ballot, like first team All Star.
Oh yeah, he just missed it. Yeah, he just
by
missed
one vote or something, which is
one of the highest scoring defensemen in the NCAA. We have J.R. Avon, which nobody talks about at all because we never drafted him and we signed him as a free agent.
I wrote an article about him at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Well, he's one of the top point producers in the OHL this year. Again, like this team is not devoid of prospects. This isn't like our system is empty. We have no direction. It's like we're just missing our 2 second-round picks. That's it. That's it.
Which has kind of screwed us, like you said, having those, especially in next year's draft. But even in this year's draft,
I think you'll be able to recoup now.
We wasted it to get rid of Ghost when we could have used it to get rid of JVR, who's a much bigger burden than Ghost was, in my opinion. And you look at our power play right now. Who would be running it? Who would be running our power play right now? It would be Ghost.
It would probably look better too.
And we could have had Ryan Ellis and Ghost. It would have been fine.
What
the defense still sucks. What?
You brought up Emil Andrea. I was going to say what I hate from some fans when I look at fingers that they're like, "Oh, well, he's only 5'8". I'm like, great.
Okay.
If you see him play either in the juniors or overseas,
he's killing it.
He doesn't play like he's 5'8".
No, he's like it's almost like
he plays like he's 6'3" and doesn't give a shit, and is just gonna put himself on the line every night.
I don't want to make a Timonen comparison in the full game, but I would say like in terms of like playing way above his size as a defenseman, I'd say Timonen and him is very comparable.
I brought that up to Cornianos. He said that's a pretty astute comparison.
Yeah.
Physical, good on his edges. He's not a burner, but he can skate really well. He can deke. He can play PK.
Pass.
Yeah, he's got that whole package. Let's just go through this real quick and then we'll end on this. I love going to Elite Prospects and just checking the points per game for Flyers prospects. And you can go to the leagues as well and see comparisons amongst their peers. But like Bobby Brink's number 1 in the NCAA in points per game, 1.53 point per game, absolutely destroying it. Elliot Denoyer has a higher point per game than Zachary Leroux, who was supposed to be the higher end player. Elliot Denoyer is absolutely killing it. We know, I don't know if he's going to be a point producer at the NHL level, but definitely potentially be a top 9 guy, at least as good as Scott Lawton offensively. Very similar, offensive output after being drafted. Connor McLennan is tied with Matthew Savoy for points per game. Yes, he's older.
That's interesting to me.
But they're tied. They both have 1.4 points per game. And again, Connor McLennan's an undersized guy.
Especially with all this is the thing. These drafts it's going to be interesting who emerges because with all that, like these prospects missing stuff due to COVID, like I don't know of how much of these games these scouts really watch. Like a lot of these OHL games have been missed big time. So
I brought this up
and CHL. So we'll see.
I brought this up a lot.
There could be a lot of diamonds in the rough. We'll see how.
Well, that's why I said when Isaiah brought it up, I think the changing the rhetoric to this draft isn't as full because they just
they
don't
say
know
that every year.
Yeah,
remember the 2017 draft?
Well,
this team has no.
You know what I really think it is?
Cale McCarr.
When you have a generational, don't you notice though? When there's a generational talent like a McDavid,
they go, it's a strong draft here.
It's a strong draft.
I will say though, there is a correlation, and if you look at like a bell curve, and you'll notice this with a lot of drafts, is like when the peak is high, there tends to be more around that bell curve. Yeah. I don't know what it's actually multiple years. Yeah. Well, it's actually multiple years. It's like, if you notice it, like if you look at a lot of drafts, like the fact that Bedard is next year, and then you look at Shane Wright in this draft, it's like, here's the Bedard draft, here's the other draft, and probably the other, the draft after will be a half a step lower, but probably will still be a strong draft. And I remember even when I played high school soccer, like I noticed that too. Like when we had our best player that came through our school, this guy Josh Bienenfeld, who ended up playing freshman for Duke, like full ride scholarship. He was the best soccer player in our school. The entire age group with him were all better than like everybody else.
Yeah,
that was also the best age group we had. So like there is some weird correlation with that. I don't know why that shit happens, but I have seen that stuff happen. But to your point, I think a lot of it is just nobody has any idea what they're talking
about. It's overhype, yeah. Just nobody, they have an idea about the guys who are generational talents because they're that good and it's easy to see, but the rest of it they don't.
Well, Flair said something I think is really important. He's like, it's not that there isn't the talent, it's more that some of these guys just need more polish. Like some of it when they're like, oh, there's more talent, it's like, no, they're just more ready than they are.
That's
like McCarr wasn't ready when he was drafted, but when he was ready, like Jesus fucking Christ. You know what I mean? Good. Like, look at the kid. He's ridiculous. So let me go through this and we'll end. So Owen McClellan, again, U.S. Hockey League. So not as competitive a hockey league, but 1.19. Also one of the top in his league. J.R. Avon, John Randall Avon, OHL. So he's got 1.08 points per game, one of the best in the league. Ronnie Attard is 1 point per game.
Which is pretty, for the defenseman in the NCAA, it's pretty
nasty. It's very good. Yeah, I mean, right underneath that, we have Jay O'Brien, who's 0.92. Dealt with some injuries, but still highly producing. Wade Allison has 7 points in 8 games. Still a legitimate prospect if he can stay healthy. Emil Andre, 0.83 points per game. He's got 9 goals, 24 assists, 33 points in 40 games this year. Also a plus 20, which is cool. Morgan Frost is on this list with 0.79. That's AHL statistics. Noah Cates, 0.73 in the NCAA. Max Willman's on this list as well, 0.72. Bryce Brodzinski is on here. He's got 0.71 in the NCAA. Not too bad. Zayd Wisdom having a slower year, but obviously missed a lot of time, 0.71. Playing with Shane Wright. So we already know. Ali Lishko is a guy I thought would be playing for the Phantoms this year. 0.71 in the SHL. Very good, actually. Jack St. Ivy needed a guy we need to sign. 4 goals, 20 assists, 0.69, 35 games. Ethan Sampson is killing it, 0.67, 13 goals, 24. He just keeps scoring. 24 assists. Dude, the kid's killing it.
He's looking like a diamond in the rough for a 6th round pick.
Absolutely. And then obviously Tanner Lazinski's got 6 points in 10 games. Brian Zanetti, OHL's got 3 goals, 19 assists, 22 points in 41 games. Let me see if there's anything else. That's pretty much it. Don't need to go through the rest. So there's hope. That's what I wanted to end on. There's some hope.
That's a positive way to go, though.
And then Zanetti. Did you say Brian Zanetti?
I did. I said Zanetti at the end.
Okay,
3 goals, 19 assists.
Yeah, for Switzerland, he was great, too. So I think that we've picked, you hit it on the head. My closing point would be, we've picked the great fill out your roster guys in the draft that are great guys that are going to help your team win when your team's ready to be there. It's just what you said, Yariv. We got to now pick either trade for a new hook or pick a Cooley or pick a Slavkovsky.
Hopefully
and
you
get
can
the
do
guy
both.
that's going to be the driver that carries the team by its bootstraps, like the Goudreaus or the Tarasenko's pre-injury, but even this year he's still pretty good.
I mean, best case scenario, I'd say for the Flyers, get a piece like a new hook or a Byram or Denisenko or something along those lines. In a Giroux trade, that's what we have to hope for, and then use draft a high-end guy with that pick, and then maybe make a splash in free agency too if you want to get a high-end guy like a Goudreau or Philip Forsberg. Then the team's looking a lot more promising, but that's a lot of moves obviously in succession. So
and Tyson Forster, just included that list. Tyson Forster hasn't played. He would probably be having a good season, maybe even playing with the Flyers at this point.
I wouldn't be surprised if they would have given him a shot.
I also agree with Isaiah. I think he has more upside than Tippett at this point, just because Tippett's been
possible.
Like very at the most steady and probably has declined since his draft year.
Okay.
Where Forster's been in a pretty good spot. So,
well, let's hope Chuck Fletcher doesn't fuck this up and
hope he makes some good moves and doesn't get himself fired coming up in the next season.
He can't really afford to fuck this up anymore,
or else his job's on the line. So
definitely with the fan base and
the pressure's there on him. I would say definitely. He's
by the way, for people that are saying we're ripping Chuck Fletcher and then complimenting draft picks just so we don't get that comment, Brett Flair does the draft. I would just like to point that out. Chuck Fletcher has barely any insight on the draft whatsoever. Well, he hands that down to Brett Flair, and Brett Flair has done a good job, I think, at that. And I would actually give him a good grade since he's come in. Chuck Fletcher's the guy that doesn't have a very good grade if I'm giving him a school greats.
Well, and I believe Flair and Fletcher were both the duo that drafted Minnesota's pool, and they did pretty good over there. And obviously, later, Greenway, Brodeen. Yeah. I don't know if they drafted Spurgeon, but that might have been.
No, but I think he was just a.
I think that was Tree.
No, I don't even know if he got drafted. He was.
He was undrafted. You're right.
He was undrafted.
Probably because of his size.
Out of the Islanders.
Because he's 5'9", right? We were just talking about that.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, let's end it, boys. All right, you guys have anything you want to talk about? Anything you're writing?
I'll probably have an article coming up this week at some point. Probably go into some trade deadline stuff.
This is by far our longest episode, by the way.
It's
like 2 hours and 54 minutes on my thing. Though I don't think it's fully that. Probably 2 hours, 45 minutes. But episode 100, baby, we made it.
I know, right? I just saw that ticker. I'm like, oh, man, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, I had a feeling we were going to go long. This is going to take forever to process. Joe, anything you got going on?
Yeah, I've been doing for NFL offseason, NHL deadline, and MLB post-lockout on my Sports Fanatic news page. I've been putting out stuff like crazy on that because it seems like every 0.2 of a second something happens in the world of hockey, football, or baseball nowadays. So I've been putting out a lot of stuff on that, and I'm going to keep doing that. And then once all that hubba bubba passes, I'll be doing a lot of stuff on the draft once I get out of this ridiculous signing period of all these sports. So.
Word. Nice. That's what's up. All right. Thank you everybody for listening. Hopefully you made it this long. The first hour was us fucking ranting, which was great. And I'm really happy Isaiah got to join. Unfortunately, Jamie probably was just with his kids all night, but I'm glad he got the bunch of the Flyers Nitty Gritty family on here. So that was awesome.
Thank you. Great for the 100th episode.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening. The channel is still growing and I haven't been putting the level of effort that I was in the beginning. I mean, it's still into the show, but obviously Joe was talking about, I was making other content and stuff. That's not going to go away for good. I've just been dealing with a new job. It's been a lot more. I'm actually going away to Israel now, but I have plans for next season. Vasili and I are going to be talking about it. We're going to do more stuff. And just thank you. Thank you everybody for listening. You guys have been amazing. I can't believe that this many people listen to us on a regular basis. Growing up, I never thought anybody would care what I had to say about the Flyers, and somehow people care. So it's awesome. So thank you so much for listening. Like, subscribe, share. It's a humongous help. And thank you. We love you. Thanks, been everybody. Awesome. Yeah. And amongst this shitty ass season. Yeah. And thank you, fellas. Really appreciate you guys doing this.
Yeah, of course.
It was a great episode. All right. Take care, everybody. Remember, always stay gritty.